A chaotic explosion erupts as the final battle reaches its world-shattering conclusion. Hero Raul collapses in exhaustion, claiming a hard-earned victory over the fallen Demon King. But he soon realizes that kindness is merely a tool for others to exploit. While the kingdom celebrates the sudden arrival of long-awaited global peace, the princess betrays him, chaining the hero to a cross before an angry mob. Even as he is executed, Raul begins to laugh with terrifying manic intensity. He vows to return and exact brutal vengeance upon every single person who betrayed him. His spirit eventually fades into a boundless white void after his physical life ends. A beautiful goddess appears in the light, wrapping her arms around his weary soul. She cries for his suffering, asking if his path was too heavy to carry alone. Raul mocks her presence, questioning if she enjoyed watching his life waste away in vain. The goddess begs for him to torture her, hoping her pain grants him new strength. She clings to him desperately, offering her divine power to facilitate his return. Seeing her weakness, Raul manipulates the deity to ensure his resurrection proceeds. With a demonic grin, he demands the goddess restore his life for total revenge. Elsewhere, the cruel Princess Victoria enjoys the hollow flattery of her nervous handmaidens. They praise her appearance in a custom dress designed for her special day. Suddenly, the princess strikes her servant in a fit of inexplicable, violent rage. The maid falls to the floor, begging for forgiveness despite her innocence. Victoria stares down in disgust, her eyes cold and filled with aristocratic malice. Victoria erupts in a violent frenzy, demanding a more suitable dress for her upcoming wedding day, and she cold-heartedly orders her servants to remove the bleeding maid and fetch a different outfit immediately, prompting the terrified maids to scramble as the princess stands triumphantly over her broken servant, while from the shadows, Commander Sandler observes the cruelty in silence as the staff flees the room, privately contemplating a series of dark omens that cast a shadow over the princess's planned departure, including a grim flashback revealing the complete annihilation of the kingdom's gatekeepers just 1 month ago, where investigators discovered the soldiers dead in pools of blood and mysterious water under clear skies. Yet despite their desperate efforts, the Royal Order of Chivalry remains clueless about the culprit's identity, causing Sandler's gaze to linger on the princess as she prepares for the day with cold elegance, as his fanatical devotion leads him to believe that protecting her beauty justifies any possible sacrifice. So he tentatively suggests canceling the parade to ensure her safety amidst the unresolved string of murders. But Victoria maliciously threatens to execute his entire order if she suffers even the slightest physical blemish. And overwhelmed by her terrifying presence, the commander bows his head in absolute and fearful submission, before quickly moving to report more disturbing news regarding the safety of the kingdom's inner circle. Noting that elite gatekeepers fell effortlessly, their strength proving useless against the unknown force currently terrorizing them, especially since a mysterious disease spreading like a curse has begun claiming many high-ranking leaders. Though the princess merely yawns with bored indifference, expressing a total lack of concern for dying elders, until Sandler reveals that the delirious victims all chant the same unsettling words before they eventually perish, showing a skeletal man gasping his final breath while praising the name of his cruel, ungrateful ruler, which Victoria finds hilarious, mockingly admiring the unwavering loyalty of those she has truly broken. Commander Sandler grows increasingly uneasy, sensing an invisible thread connecting the gruesome gatekeeper murders to the mysterious illness. Yet Princess Victoria remains arrogantly dismissive, claiming she despises fear now that both the Demon King and hero are dead, mysteriously hinting that the upcoming parade will be safe because they possess an abundance of disposable shields, explicitly labeling the knights and the common populace as her personal protection since she is the country's sacred treasure. Leaning in close to mock the commander's concern with a smile that betrays her true, cold-blooded nature, as her calculating gaze remains fixed upon him, demanding total submission to her twisted logic, causing the enamored Sandler to blush as he pledges the lives of every citizen to ensure her safety. While outside, the grand parade commences with bells ringing and massive crowds gathering to witness the royal arrival. So Victoria and her fiancé wave graciously to the cheering masses while flower petals drift through the air, soaking in the overwhelming adoration of the people with a deceptive, picture-perfect smile on her face. As the citizens scream their praises, declaring the princess to be the most beautiful treasure of their land, secretly relishing the thunderous cheers that validate her absolute control over the hearts of the public. Though she internally scorns her fiancé, Emile, viewing him as a mere accessory to her own undeniable popularity, while the handsome Count Emile Auclair laughs off her bitterness, unaware of the depths of her contempt. Reflecting on her cold calculations, Victoria acknowledges his high social status as a necessary step for her marriage. Despite finding his constant, entitled chatter about being a mama's boy to be an insufferable chore to endure, ultimately dismissing the annoyance as trivial, while she tightly grips her gown in anticipation of her grand future, intending to use Emile only to produce a son she can place upon the throne, to seize sovereignty, regarding the man as a favorable instrument because he possesses the right pedigree, looks, and lack of intelligence, even as she darkly muses that any child who fails to meet her aesthetic standards would be immediately killed. Victoria glances at Emile, contemptuously noting he is merely a shallow man with nothing but a handsome face, privately musing that if she only valued physical appearance, the hero would have been vastly superior. Recalling a flashback of Raoul kneeling in the throne room, vowing to defeat the Demon King, remembering him as a simple, kind-hearted warrior during his days of naive and selfless service, internally mocking the man she considered foolish, while she planned his inevitable and tragic downfall. However, the intensity of his powerful gaze from that time continues to haunt her thoughts. Admitting her sadistic urge to defile those honest eyes while hiding behind a mask of royalty, reflecting on the grim satisfaction of driving the hero to death with her very own hands. Picturing his final face of despair as a delightful memory she refuses to ever let go. Transitioning to the present grand wedding ceremony where the Royal Order of Chivalry pledges their allegiance, deciding with cold calculation to offer a brief greeting to the citizens acting as her shields, flashing a radiant, deceptive smile that instantly captivates the masses gathered for the celebration, causing the adoring crowds to erupt in cheers, completely oblivious to their ruler's true dark nature, declaring inwardly that this strong country and the entire world are now hers to control, vowing to seize everything for herself while looking down with a prideful and chilling expression, clasping hands with Emile as the hooded priests prepare to officiate the sacred union of power, calling for the ritual to begin while the ceremonial staff is held high in the air. As the clergy recites the promised words, praying for God to grant the couple eternal happiness, demanding the final blessing as she stands tall, awaiting the divine confirmation of her sovereignty. Victoria closes her eyes with a smug smile, savoring the prayer for her country's eternal blessings. Victoria and Emile stand before the priest ready to finalize their union under the eyes of the public. The massive crowd watches in breathless silence, eagerly awaiting the final blessing of their beloved royal couple. Victoria stares ahead with a cold, triumphant gaze. Certain that her long-awaited era of glory has begun, the hooded officiant stands motionlessly, gripping his ceremonial staff as petals continue to drift through the air. Hidden beneath the deep shadows of the hood, a sinister and knowing smirk slowly creeps across his face. Victoria's eyes suddenly widen in terror as she hears the priest utter a chillingly familiar phrase. The princess freezes in place, her mind reeling as she recognizes the exact words of her victims. Blood sprays across the scene, staining Victoria's beautiful face and white gown. The accompanying priests are brutally slaughtered in an instant, their bodies collapsing as blood pools. Chaos erupts as more blood splatters, mockingly echoing the repetitive and hollow prayers for the princess. Victoria and Emile stand paralyzed with horror, unable to comprehend the sudden bloody turn of events. Gasping for air, the blood-soaked princess stares at the carnage with a face twisted by primal fear. The mysterious figure finally reaches up, slowly pulling back his hood to reveal his identity to everyone. He tosses the cloth aside, revealing the unmistakable sight of messy, jet-black hair. A single red eye gleams with an intense, supernatural fire, burning with a deep and ancient hatred. The crowd gasps as the figure stands fully revealed, greeting the terrified princess with a mocking remark. Hero Raoul has returned from the grave. Standing tall and looking down upon the woman who betrayed him, he steps forward with heavy, deliberate boots, declaring he has been resurrected from the depths of hell. With a demonic grin, Raoul vows to execute his brutal revenge upon every single soul in the kingdom. The final moments of the ceremony dissolve into a nightmare as the true tragedy begins to unfold. Raoul declares his resurrection from hell for revenge, while Princess Victoria stares in disbelief at the impossible sight. Remembering back to the White Void where his journey through the afterlife and his path to vengeance began, where he met the goddess of love, who desperately pleaded for his attention despite his previous world-saving vows. Noting that her blind support likely stems from her divine nature as a being driven by obsessive affection, questioning if the gods themselves orchestrated his tragic downfall just to satisfy their own twisted celestial desires. He simply acknowledges her answer while preparing to delve even deeper into her true and hidden motives. As the deity weeps over the cruelty of the very humans the hero sacrificed his life to protect, he roughly grabs her chin to force her to witness the ugly truth of the world she oversees, demanding she never forget the horrific fate humans inflicted upon the man chosen to be their noble savior. While reflecting on the grave error the gods made in their judgment of the wicked hearts of mankind, leading the goddess to confess her overwhelming love for him despite his cold and cynical new personality. Noticing her fearless expression and eyes that carry a will strong enough to potentially reshape the entire world, realizing her title makes her the perfect tool, Raoul begins plotting how to use her divine affection. He leans in close with a demonic grin, asking for her power to resurrect and destroy his enemies. Though she warns that a once dead spirit must be properly cleansed before it can safely walk the earth, Raoul dismisses her warnings and divine laws, challenging her to prove the depth of her promised devotion now, mocking the sincerity of her feelings to manipulate her into defying the sacred rules of the celestial realm. Until the goddess falls silent, contemplating the weight of the forbidden request her beloved has just made, she finally relents to his dark request, granting him the power needed to return to the living world, fueling his resolve to use every person and deity as stepping stones for his absolute and bloody revenge. Raoul mocks the goddess's reluctance, reminding her of the miserable experience he endured because of the humans she loves. He then demands the return of his sealed dark power, ignoring her warnings that it will consume his soul. Desperate to stop him, the goddess offers a lifetime of eternal happiness within a peaceful paradise instead of bloodshed. However, Raoul rejects her proposal, declaring that he only finds joy in purging the world and watching traitors suffer. Seeing his dark resolve, the goddess reacts with twisted adoration, while Raoul simply notes how truly insane she is. Meanwhile, at the grim Auerbach castle, the atmosphere grows heavy within the light of the flickering dungeon torches. Princess Victoria mercilessly interrogates a chained woman named Sandra, blaming her for failing to provide adequate protection during battle. She cruelly mocks the captive's weakness, questioning why she didn't sacrifice her own limbs to save her royal mistress. When Sandra tries to apologize, Victoria violently silences her with a brutal strike, showing no mercy for her servant. The dungeon echoes with manic screams of silence as the princess loses her composure in a fit of rage. Breathing heavily, Victoria stands over her victim, her eyes wide with a terrifying and bloodthirsty intensity. Blood drips onto the cold stone floor while the prisoner gasps for breath, barely clinging to her fading life. A guard suggests that the hero's magic is protecting the prisoner, further fueling the princess's mounting frustration. Victoria's hand trembles with rage as she struggles to maintain control over the baffling situation within the dungeon. She realizes an invisible barrier has thwarted her attempt at decapitation, leaving her unable to finish her captive. Enraged, she sends out messengers with urgent orders to hunt down the hero and bring back his head. Elsewhere, the vast forest landscape remains deceptively calm beneath the morning sun and distant mountain peaks. Suddenly, the quiet is shattered by the thunderous sound of a horse galloping frantically through the thick trees. A lone messenger pushes his steed to the limit, desperate to deliver a secret message to a powerful ally. Dark shadows abruptly emerge from the undergrowth, causing the horse to rear back in sudden, startled terror. Savage goblins suddenly surround the panicked messenger within the dark, dense foliage of the forest. Cursed by bad timing, the messenger draws his blade while his horse whinnies in sheer terror. He screams in desperation, knowing he has no time to waste fighting these common monsters. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying shadow looms over him from behind, dwarfing his meager human presence completely. A monstrous goblin king appears, its glowing eyes and sharp teeth promising a quick, gruesome end. The messenger gasps in horror as the giant beast strikes, realizing he is completely outmatched. However, a powerful warrior intervenes, slicing through the massive creature with a single devastating blow. General Brown looks down at the trembling man, calmly asking if he has sustained any injuries. The survivor stares up in absolute awe, his mouth hanging open as he attempts to respond. Standing amidst the scattered remains of the pack, the general notes they were likely tracking him, He curtly instructs the messenger to stay close for protection while the remaining goblins screech nearby. With masterful precision, the legendary swordsman obliterates the surrounding monsters in a whirlwind of lethal steel. The young messenger watches the display of overwhelming strength with wide, sparkling eyes of pure admiration. He praises the general's incredible speed, thanking him for the unexpectedly swift and total rescue. Feeling humbled, the soldier can only gape at the peerless prowess of the nation's greatest warrior. General Brown reassures the man, stating that he will no longer be prey for such monsters. Wearing his signature eye patch, the veteran soldier offers a rare, gentle smile of genuine relief. His expression remains warm as the scene shifts toward a moment of quiet peace and domestic normalcy. Later that evening, a fine dinner is served at the castle, the sound of cutlery clinking. General Brown announces to his family that he departs for the capital tomorrow to investigate the hero. General Brown notes how quickly news of the messenger's arrival has reached his son Adam during dinner. The children listen with wide-eyed excitement, eager to hear more about the world beyond their home. One boy aggressively demands his father execute the resurrected hero by the most merciless means possible. They discuss their future training, lamenting that they cannot yet serve as brothers in arms together. Brown reassures them with a calm smile, noting that a year will pass in a mere heartbeat. He promises to bring a special toy from the capital if Connie focuses on his martial lessons. His daughter cheers with innocent delight, expressing her sincere gratitude for her father's kind, generous heart. The general's wife observes the family scene fondly, teasing her husband about his soft spot for Connie. He looks toward Adam with pride, stating he anticipates the day they finally stand together in battle. However, a butler suddenly interrupts the family gathering to speak with his master about the evening's logistics. The elderly man questions the messenger's missing meal, while a nervous servant offers a humble, sincere apology. Another staff member explains that the newcomer is still learning the castle's many complex daily routines. Brown dismisses the confusion, explaining the messenger was too anxious about the capital to stay for dinner. He calmly orders the servants to withdraw and leave the family to finish their formal evening meal. The veteran warrior takes a slow, relaxed sip from his glass while waiting for the next course. A quiet maid eventually enters the room to announce that the long-awaited main dish is finally ready. She rolls a large silver platter to the table, her eyes remaining fixed on the covered feast. A hand reaches out with practiced grace to lift the dome and reveal the meal waiting beneath. General Brown's eyes light up with hungry anticipation as he prepares to enjoy the final course. He leans forward to inhale the rich aroma, describing the scent as absolutely and completely irresistible. General Brown watches as the maid reveals the succulent main dish he specifically requested for his final meal. Staring at the thick steak with relish, he declares there is nothing better than meat before a battle. Casually informing his family that he personally hunted this fresh game earlier in the day to prepare himself, while his wife and children watch with admiration, delighted by the high-quality feast served at their table, the general eats with predatory gusto, laughing as he describes the flavor of the meat as absolutely scrumptious, claiming that the savory meal tastes like the very essence of the victory he expects to achieve tomorrow. As the servants quietly withdraw from the room, offering their humble thanks for the messenger's hard work, the dawn of the next day arrives as birds take flight across the clear sky above the mountains. General Brown prepares to depart from the northern fortress, mounting his horse to begin the long journey south, while his bloodthirsty children wave goodbye, loudly begging their father to return home with the hero's severed head. Once he is gone, the young siblings turn to each other with sinister grins and a shared dark purpose, deciding to spend their afternoon practicing their hunting skills using a living toy they have captured for sport. Blood splatters violently across the vibrant green grass. Adam cold-bloodedly crushes a kobold's throat, while his sister Connie complains about the irritating noise the beast makes. Connie's eyes glow with a disturbing red light as she dismisses the current monster as no longer necessary. The terrified creature whimpers and growls, realization of its impending doom finally setting into its primitive, animal mind. Adam strikes the small beast quite violently now. She becomes manically excited, urging her older brother to hurry and finish the kill with more brutal force. Vowing to fry the monster herself, Connie displays a cruel bloodlust that rivals her father's own terrifying nature. Adam releases a powerful and destructive blast, laughing as the beast tries to escape while Connie finished it. Connie and Adam react in shock as a sudden, violent explosion tears through the quiet forest. allowing their small, battered prey to scramble away through the thick undergrowth in desperate terror, until another magical blast slams into the creature, sending it tumbling across the grass, forcing the siblings to chase after it again while they mock the beast's pitiful cries, until they finally corner the monster, with Connie asking for her brother's permission to finish it. And she prepares to slaughter the creature with a look of pure, unadulterated joy. But a massive dark silhouette suddenly emerges from behind them, casting an ominous shadow, revealing the resurrected hero Raoul, who looks down at the cruel children with terrifying coldness. As he looms over the terrified siblings, mocking their sadistic games with a chilling smile, and he offers to join their playtime, his expression promising a far more brutal game. Meanwhile, memories of Princess Victoria's cruel reign surface through a haze of blood and roses, shifting back to a time before the carnage, when white flowers bloomed around the royal capital. Then elite gatekeepers confront a mysterious traveler and demand that he halt his advance immediately. With one soldier struggling to recall where he has seen the traveler's face before today, and Raoul stands before them humming a dark tune, deciding which of them to kill first. The soldiers' faces drain of color as they recognize the supposedly dead hero standing alive. So they quickly mobilize their forces, surrounding the lone man with a wall of spears. But the men arrogantly taunt him, questioning if he returned to avenge his fallen comrades, and they erupt into vile laughter while bragging about the atrocities they committed against his friends. Raoul simply smiles at the monsters in human skin, declaring them the perfect subjects for his new power. Raoul stands within a glowing magic circle, signaling the start of his gruesome and calculated slaughter, suddenly unleashing a violent storm of blood as he pierces through the flesh of surrounding knights, causing terrified soldiers to beg for mercy, claiming they were merely following the princess's orders, while one knight desperately explains they would have been killed for violating her royal commands. But Raoul mockingly promises to violate them slowly in return for their past transgressions, leaving the lead soldier to stare in wide-eyed horror as his inevitable death approaches, until a sharp spike of darkness erupts from the floor, brutally impaling the screaming man. Observing the dying heretics, Raoul wears a chilling smile as their agonizing cries fill the air. Transitioning back to the void, the hero demands the goddess fulfill her vow and grant his wish, and they share a shimmering kiss as celestial light and sparkles surround the forbidden ritual, sealing their dark contract with an intense embrace that pulses with supernatural and forbidden passion, leading Raoul to awaken his true potential, his body radiating a terrifying and overwhelming energy, as he realizes this capacity for absolute destruction is his original power. Finally unbound, coldly ordering the weakened deity to finish the ritual and restore his life immediately, though she gazes up with tearful eyes, lamenting the regret of their inevitable parting. Raoul offers a deceptive and hollow blessing while preparing his descent back to the earth. As the goddess prays fervently while his spirit manifests within the physical realm once more, she sends him forth, declaring that a new and blood-soaked legend has finally begun. And with eyes burning with malice, the hero readies himself for total vengeance. Blood splatters across the scene as the real massacre commences with terrifying finality. Standing atop a moonlit cliff, Raoul prepares to unleash a systematic purge upon the entire world below. Shifting back to a memory, elite guards block a gate, citing the princess's upcoming month-long wedding festivities. An arrogant soldier dismissively orders the traveler to turn around and leave the restricted capital grounds immediately. Returning to the bloody present, Raoul stands among the impaled corpses of those very same unwelcoming guards. He muses about the fascinating timing of the princess's parade, while wearing a wide, shark-like grin. His expression remains terrifying as he reflects on the month that has passed since his miraculous resurrection. Princess Victoria stares in total shock at the warm blood now coating her trembling hand and face. She screams in disgust, labeling the scene filthy, while Raoul approaches with an air of cold, calculated patience. Raoul laughs maniacally at her hypocrisy, noting that she always viewed the lives of others as mere filth. His eyes narrow with a sinister satisfaction as he realizes his expectations of her character were entirely correct. Sandler frantically shields the princess, screaming that the hero is dead and this must be a deceptive demon. Raoul dismissively kicks the head of a fallen soldier, expressing his utter contempt for the elite royal guard. He begins listing the church's heinous crimes from siphoning offerings to the brutal torture of innocent people. Victoria and Sandler watch in horror while Raoul demands they acknowledge the many lives sacrificed for their luxury. Dark blood pools across the pavement, serving as a silent testament to the hero's newfound and merciless resolve. Raoul shrugs off their accusations of being a demon, calmly asserting that this vengeance is his true form. The princess erupts in a desperate denial, screaming that the man before her should already be dead. Looking bored by her lack of understanding, Raoul sighs at the difficulty of continuing their stalled conversation. He reaches out with a sudden, predatory motion, deciding to end the verbal debate with direct physical action. Grabbing the princess by her hair, he invites her to observe his face closely to confirm his identity. Sandler watches in grim silence as the hero's voice mockingly describes the horrific and escalating chaos as hilarious. Suddenly, several elite knights are decapitated simultaneously, their blood spouting into the air around a shocked Sandler. The surrounding crowd of citizens stares in paralyzed horror as blood from the fallen soldiers splatters across them. Meanwhile, Raoul playfully admires the princess while maintaining his firm, agonizing grip on her golden hair. Panic quickly spreads through the masses as people scream and trample one another in a desperate attempt to flee. The frantic citizens begin fighting among themselves, shouting at anyone blocking their only path to safety. Raoul laughs at the sight of the princess's subjects destroying themselves while he holds her captive on stage. Suddenly, a heavy bundle falls onto the cobblestones, drawing the confused attention of the nearby onlookers. With a terrifying grin, the hero encourages the crowd to watch his grand performance until the bitter end. A sudden and violent impact shatters the remaining piece of the square as the massacre continues unabated. Raoul presents the struggling princess as the star of his rare and gruesome public spectacle. He tells the citizens to appreciate the sight from their positions, his eyes gleaming with dark amusement. The hero mocks the ordinary people who plead for their lives, laughing at their futile demands for freedom. Victoria erupts in a desperate rage, screaming for silence while claiming she has no fear of this monster. The entire kingdom watches in stunned silence as the hero continues to humiliate their once beloved ruler publicly. The blood-soaked princess glares at her tormentor with a face twisted by a mixture of pride and hatred. Raoul merely sighs at her stubbornness, reiterating that he is not a monster despite his brutal actions. He whispers a chilling question into her ear, forcing her to confront the reality of her dire situation. Leaning in closer, the hero tells her to calm down and accept the truth of his miraculous return. Victoria desperately orders her remaining knight to strike down the hero immediately and end this nightmare. Victoria screams in defiance, ignoring the hero's mockery while her face is twisted with a desperate, aristocratic rage. She ruthlessly orders Sandler to save her at any cost, even if it requires mutilating his own legs. Raoul feigns deep shock at her heartless demand, mocking her cruelty with a wide and theatrical gasp. He declares the square belongs to him alone, warning the knight not to deviate from his dark script. The hero's gaze narrows as he speaks the name of the female knight he holds in utter contempt. Maintaining his agonizing grip on Victoria's hair, he hints at knowing her true form beneath the royal facade. The gruesome spectacle intensifies as Raoul promises that the red curtain of his performance is about to rise. The ornate and blood-stained layers of the princess's wedding dress flutter as the tension in the plaza peaks. He turns his attention toward the princess's husband, deciding that Emile must participate in this twisted final act. A glowing magical sigil erupts on the count's chest, causing the nobleman to scream in sudden, painful confusion. Raoul gleefully announces a duet for the royal couple, gesturing dramatically toward the terrified and helpless young man. Emile is launched through the air with incredible force, his undignified cries echoing across the entire blood-stained plaza. The nobleman crashes directly into his bride, who watches his pathetic display with a growing sense of horror. To her disgust, the prideful husband begins to weep uncontrollably, desperately calling out for his mother's divine protection. He breaks down completely in a shameful display, sobbing like a small child while begging his mama for salvation. Victoria's expression shifts to pure disbelief as she realizes the man she married possesses a pathetic mother complex. The hero erupts in genuine, mocking laughter, finding the revelation of Emile's true character to be absolutely hilarious. While the husband wails for his mother, the princess stands frozen, utterly humiliated by his sudden, shameful weakness. Sandler screams for the hero to release his royal captive, his face contorted with a futile sense of duty. The hero smiles with chilling satisfaction, announcing that the principal actors are finally assembled for his grand finale. A heavy silence falls over the city as the hero's presence suffocates the hope of the once proud kingdom. Raoul casually questions why the princess isn't wearing a white dress for her grand marriage announcement, mocking her by stating that the vibrant color of blood would never look appealing against a red gown. Suddenly, he violently shreds her ornate wedding gown. Victoria screams in absolute terror, begging to know what the monstrous hero plans to do to her now. Raoul simply stares back with a chillingly calm expression that betrays his deep, underlying madness. Revealing a truly predatory and sinister grin, he suggests it is time for the main event, mockingly asking if the princess still desires to have children. The princess's eyes tremble with a growing realization of the nightmare that is about to unfold before everyone. She gasps in horror, accusing the hero of planning a truly vile and unforgivable act against her person. Raoul licks his lips with a demonic intensity. Shadows deepen around the stage as the atmosphere thickens with the scent of impending, systematic cruelty. The hero continues to humiliate his captive, while the pathetic Count Emile wails for his mother in the background. Victoria fruitlessly warns him of the consequences, claiming her royal body is far too sacred for his touch. She desperately threatens him with past traumas, hoping to break his resolve through the memory of her previous cruelty. However, Raoul finds her sudden recognition of his status amusing, commandingly ordering the proud princess to finally kneel. From the sidelines, Sandler erupts in a desperate fury, calling the hero a coward for taking a royal hostage. Raoul turns his head slowly with narrow eyes. He repeats the knight's words back to him with a tone of utter disbelief and mounting, cold irritation, questioning the concept of honor while staring into Sandler's eyes with a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. Raoul's intense gaze bores into his captors, questioning if they have forgotten their previous cruel methods. His mind drifts back to a peaceful time in Macaulay Village before the war ended, where the kind-hearted hero smiled warmly while greeting the hard-working local villagers. Neighbors shared a final, humble meal before the party's inevitable departure for the front lines. Raoul and his comrades thanked the community for their unwavering support throughout their long journey. A young boy stepped forward, offering a simple gift as a token of the village's gratitude. Touched by the gesture, Raoul questioned if such a precious item should really be given away, but he ultimately promised the children he would return to play once peace was finally restored. Later, news reached the capital that the hero had successfully subjugated the long-dreaded Demon King. However, a dark shadow of betrayal begins to loom over the kingdom's newfound fragile celebrations. Princess Victoria coldly ordered the total annihilation of every villager the hero had ever known. Her cruelty knew no bounds as she planned the systematic destruction of his precious memories. The darkness of her soul manifested in orders that bypassed any sense of human morality, specifically demanding the soldiers skewer every single man, woman, and child without a hint of mercy. She stood in silence, basking in the twisted power of her absolute and bloodthirsty authority. While elegantly sipping tea, the princess reveled in the secret horrors she had set in motion. With a sadistic smirk, she wondered what expression of despair would cross Raoul's face soon. Consequently, the tranquility of the countryside was suddenly shattered by a wave of mindless, state-sanctioned violence. Raoul eventually returned home, his eyes widening in soul-crushing shock at the sight before him. Finding his village transformed into a graveyard, he stood among the mutilated corpses of his friends. Dead children lie scattered across the blood-soaked ground of the once peaceful village. A young boy's lifeless face rests in a pool of dark, cold blood. Raoul stares in shattered silence, his heart breaking at the sight of the senseless massacre. The royal soldiers suddenly ambush him, shouting orders to seize the returning hero immediately. The grief in Raoul's eyes quickly hardens into a cold and absolute resolve for vengeance. He mockingly informs the commander that the guards' deaths were meant as a special homage. Sandler desperately tries to justify the atrocity, screaming that their actions were not a crime. The hero watches coldly as the knight proudly declares his allegiance to the treacherous princess. The commander continues his frantic defense, insisting he was merely following his royal mistress's orders. He even dares to claim that committing a massacre is righteous for the sake of justice. Sandler further insults the victims by suggesting the villagers were actually eager to die for her. The knight suddenly recoils in confusion, shocked by the supernatural volume of his own voice. Raoul reveals with a smirk that he used magic to amplify those vile words for everyone. Princess Victoria remains humiliated and exposed, her royal crimes laid bare before the entire kingdom. The shocked citizens begin to murmur in horror as the truth of the incident finally surfaces. The princess's eyes burn with a hateful intensity, reflecting her shattered pride and mounting desperation. Raoul laughs manically while the commander begs for forgiveness for his unintended public confession. With a snap of his fingers, Raoul forces Sandler to deliver a brutal blow to Victoria. She shrieks in pure narcissism, more concerned about her bruised face than her lost honor. The hero erupts in mocking glee as Sandler weeps over his body's forced and violent betrayal. A brief interlude occurs as a heartfelt message of appreciation is shared with the dedicated readers and supporters. Raoul mockingly asks the princess why she chose not to wear white for her own grand marriage announcement. He notes with a sinister grin that blood would never look appealing against a dress already colored red. The hero suddenly and violently shreds the princess's ornate gown, leaving her standing exposed and utterly terrified. Victoria recoils in shock, screaming at the man she calls a demon while fearing his next brutal move. Raoul meets her gaze with a chillingly calm expression that betrays the depth of his internal, chaotic madness. A wide, predatory smile stretches across the hero's face as he prepares to escalate his systematic psychological torture. He suggests it is time for the main event, mockingly asking the princess about her desire for children. Victoria's eyes widen with a sudden, overwhelming realization of the nightmare that is about to unfold before everyone. She gasps in total horror, accusing Raoul of planning a vile and sexually aggressive act against her person. The hero's eyes gleam with a dark, satisfied intensity, while he savors the princess's absolute and overwhelming despair. Dark blood splatters across the scene as the narrative promises more gruesome spectacles in the near future. Victoria desperately screams that her sacred body is far too exalted for any lowly commoner to ever touch. She continues her futile resistance, questioning if the hero knows the fate that awaits those who harm royalty. The princess tries to weaponize his past suffering, asking if he truly wants to endure such pain again. Raoul finds it hilarious that she finally acknowledges his identity while still demanding a humble, submissive apology. Sandler erupts in a desperate fury, calling the hero a coward for taking the defenseless princess as hostage. The hero remains silent, turning his back to the night while continuing to focus on his royal captive. He slowly looks over his shoulder with a chillingly focused gaze, questioning the accusations leveled against him. Raoul repeats the concept of honor back to the night with a tone of absolute and crushing mockery. A flashback reveals Macaulay Village where the locals wave goodbye while promising to pray for divine protection. Then church bells chime across the peaceful mountain landscape as the hero sets off on his journey. Suddenly, the memory sours as guards cross their spears at Raoul's throat to signal his abrupt capture. Consequently, he is forced to kneel before Princess Victoria while elite guards surround him with drawn weapons. She claps her hands in sadistic delight, mocking how effortlessly the kingdom's greatest savior was finally caught. Raoul gasps in disbelief, desperately asking for the meaning behind this sudden and absolute betrayal by his sovereign. Instead, the princess merely laughs at his confusion as he demands to know what offense justifies his treatment. She leans in close with a terrifying grin, declaring that his only crime is simply continuing to exist. Explaining he has outgrown his use now that the Demon King is dead, she dismisses him like trash. Raoul screams in agony, demanding to know why the village was burned and the innocent people slaughtered. But he freezes in horror as the princess lies, claiming the massacre was actually the hero's own doing, as her cold eyes look down on him with a chilling lack of empathy for the lives destroyed. She places a sharp blade under his chin, offering a deceptive salvation if he submits to her completely. Admitting that she finds his fierce and defiant gaze intriguing despite her intense and obvious hatred, Raoul glares back with eyes full of hatred, only for Victoria to express a desire to defile him. She then coldly orders her subordinate Sandra to take the hero away for further and more private torment. So Raoul struggles as he is hauled away, fearful of the dark intentions the princess holds for him. Next, he is forced onto a bed as Victoria looms over him in the darkness of the chambers, looking down with a predatory smirk, commandingly ordering him to raise his head for her to see. Finally, the hero stares blankly as blood drips down his face, his spirit broken by the kingdom's cruelty. A gruesome sight reveals a woman impaled by multiple swords, her blood pooling amidst scattered flower petals. Her dying smile haunts the air as she speaks of a cruel burden the hero must carry. Fueled by rage, Raoul declares the start of the finale, demanding atonement for his sister's horrific murder. Magical energy surges violently around the petrified princess, trapping her within a circle of divine and deadly light. The hero struggles to contain his overwhelming hatred, reminding himself that simple death is far too merciful. A massive spectral fist descends with bone-shattering force, beginning a systematic and brutal session of torture. Raoul stands ready to continue the assault, his cold eyes fixed on his crumbling royal enemies. Victoria stumbles blindly through her own blood, her elegant shoes slipping on the wet and stained pavement. Another violent strike connects with her face, shattering her composed mask into a spray of reddened teeth. She collapses in agony, her once proud form broken and twitching on the cold stones of the plaza. Nearby, the pathetic Count Emile wails like a terrified infant, begging for his mother while Raoul watches coldly. The princess gasps for breath as an agonizing pain erupts within her stomach, signaling a fatal internal injury. Raoul mockingly warns her that screaming will only accelerate the blood loss and hasten her inevitable end. He then activates a healing spell, maliciously deciding that she is not allowed to die quite yet. He explains that her quick death would be boring, using magic to keep her alive for more suffering. Standing over the broken royal couple, the hero asks if the pain has finally begun to fade. Victoria erupts in a slur of mangled rage, cursing her former pawn for daring to rebel against her. The hero casually dismisses her anger, pointing out that she is merely reaping the seeds of her own cruelty. With a chilling smile, he notes that he is only mirroring the same atrocities they once committed. Suddenly, Raoul pauses as if struck by a new and even more terrifying idea for their punishment. Raoul taunts the guards, promising they will eventually get their turn to die a miserable and painful death. He then dismissively declares the day's performance over, bidding everyone a mocking farewell with a small snap, leading the remaining Imperial soldiers to flee the plaza in a state of absolute and unbridled terror. While the battered Princess Victoria lies in her own blood, weakly questioning her soldiers' sudden and shameful retreat, she suddenly erupts in a frenzied rage, screaming for her guards to return and kill the hero immediately. Raoul laughs at her desperate howling, finding her futile attempts to command her broken forces to be hilarious. However, a few loyal knights stand their ground, preparing to risk everything for their fallen royal mistress. They charge forward with a roar, desperately attempting to slay the hero for the sake of the princess. Several sharp blades suddenly plunge into Raoul's chest, seemingly ending the resurrected man's life a second time. He coughs up a spray of dark blood, staring blankly as the cold steel remains embedded in him. Watching the scene, Victoria smiles with sadistic glee, believing she has finally secured her absolute victory over him. But Raoul begins to laugh manically, declaring that this is the inevitable fate for anyone who opposes him. He sighs with boredom, preparing to demonstrate the true and terrifying nature of his newfound dark immortality. The princess screams in a deluded frenzy, convinced that she has finally managed to kill her hated enemy. Blood splatters across the ground, while voices demand that the hero regret and repent for his many sins. Raoul looks down at the swords in his chest, calmly stating that simple skewers cannot kill a hero. Victoria's expression turns to one of pure, unadulterated horror as she realizes her lethal trap has utterly failed. He mockingly apologizes for failing to meet her expectations, while blood continues to drip from his wounds. With chilling composure, the hero begins to slowly pull the long swords out of his own mangled body. Raoul promises to return once her face heals, leaving the princess to weep in the shadow of his departure. Raoul walks away, tossing a bloodied sword back toward his fallen enemies. He waves to the audience, bidding them a mockingly polite and final farewell. Suddenly he turns around, pretending he has forgotten one last and important detail. A dark and predatory smirk slowly spreads across his blood-stained, handsome face. Raoul offers Victoria his most venomous and insincere wedding congratulations before leaving. The princess is reduced to a blubbering, snot-filled mess of absolute despair. He spreads his arms wide, offering a sarcastic and final blessing to everyone. Shifting scenes, Raoul somberly carries a bouquet of flowers through a vast field. He walks alone down the aisle of a silent, abandoned, and desecrated church. Grieving before his sister's grave, he softly apologizes for being so late. He tightly grips the flowers, his hands trembling with a deeply suppressed grief. Raoul kneels in a quiet moment to place the fresh bouquet down gently. His intense eyes burn with the painful memory of those he has lost. Heavy footsteps echo as he finally turns to leave the cold, dark sanctuary. Elsewhere, a sick man gasps for air, his face turning pale and dying. The hero watches coldly as a bloated noble perishes in his royal bed. He looks back one final time at the carnage he left far behind. Stationed before the building, Raoul raises his hands to channel his dark magic. He commands his treacherous enemies to burn in the depths of eternal hellfire. Magical beams obliterate the horizon as he solemnly vows never to return again. Raoul tosses the sword aside, walking past the broken and defeated princess while the guards watch in silence. He waves a cheerful goodbye to the shocked onlookers, mockingly telling them he will see them again soon. Suddenly, the hero pauses and turns back, feigning a sudden realization about a detail he supposedly forgot to mention. Wearing a chillingly handsome smirk, he prepares to deliver his final, most venomous parting words to his royal tormentor. He offers his most insincere wedding congratulations to Victoria, his eyes glowing with a terrifying and triumphant malice. The princess is left as a shivering, snot-streaked mess on the ground, completely broken by the hero's psychological assault. Spreading his arms wide amidst the carnage, Raoul mockingly repeats the sacred words once used to honor his betrayer. Shifting to a somber moment, Raoul walks through a quiet field holding a fresh bouquet of white flowers. He enters a silent, empty cathedral where the light filters through stained glass onto a path of blood. Standing before a grave, he softly apologizes for his long absence, calling out to his departed older sister. He tightly clutches the flowers as memories of the past and the weight of his mission press upon him. Kneeling in the dark church, he places the bouquet down as a final tribute to his only family. His eyes drift shut in a rare moment of mourning before the cold resolve of vengeance returns once more. Stepping through pools of blood, the hero's boots leave a trail as he moves toward his next target. Close by, a corrupt and bloated priest gasps his final breaths while facing the consequence of past greed. Raoul stands over the bed, revealing that he already claimed this life before the public parade even began. The hero looks back on the man named Gustav, a greedy priest who once betrayed his only family. In a memory, the man was paralyzed with shock to find the hero alive and seeking retribution. This palatial mansion was built on stolen gold, serving as a monument to the priest's utter corruption. A mysterious hooded figure approaches the ornate doors, whistling as he prepares to enter and begin the massacre. The hero prepares to purge the world for a second time as his dark magic begins to manifest. A spectral image of his late sister appears, watching over him with a serene and gentle smile. Raoul looks toward the sky, softly calling out to her as he continues his descent into vengeful madness. Blinding light erupts from his body, signifying the terrifying awakening of his true and unrestrained magical potential. He laughs maniacally at his enemies, suggesting that even the dead are now joining his gruesome performance. The Phantom Sister observes that a sane mind is simply a toxic burden for those seeking absolute revenge. Raoul gleefully notes that the royal capital is in complete uproar as suspicion against the princess grows rapidly. He relishes the fact that he is now the hunter, while those who trusted Victoria cower in fear. He mockingly dismisses the healer's efforts, stating that the princess's mangled body is beyond any hope of recovery. Raoul reveals that he has placed a powerful magical barrier around the capital to trap all his victims. Declaring that not a single person will escape his wrath, he prepares to unleash a wave of destruction. His thoughts turn to the corrupt priest who betrayed his sister, his expression hardening with cold, lethal intent. The hero boasts of having already murdered the man in his own home before the royal parade began. He laughs at the memory of his successful infiltration, finding the chaos he caused to be deeply satisfying. Recalling how he disguised himself as a priest, he savors the moment he finally surprised the unsuspecting princess. He labels the look of pure terror on Victoria's face a masterpiece, while his dark laughter fills the air. In a surreal interlude, the hero contemplates the ongoing compilation of his dark deeds and future legendary status. Returning to reality at the northern fortress, the heavy weight of history looms over the battlefield's edge. Raoul sits peacefully in a sunlit field, casually enjoying the nice weather before resuming his bloody mission. He looks down at his new prizes, General Brown's sons, who are now bound and screaming in terror. Raoul oversees servants digging holes under the setting sun, mockingly urging them to work faster for their safety. He coldly instructs them to remain still for now, hinting at a grim special duty awaiting them later. Meanwhile, General Brown's children lie bound and terrified on the grass, unable to escape their captor's twisted game. One of the servants suddenly shouts in discovery, finding something buried deep within the dark, upturned earth. Raoul approaches the edge of the pit with casual curiosity, eager to see what the excavations have unearthed. A gruesome pile of human skulls and skeletal remains is revealed, hidden beneath the castle grounds for years. Looking down into the massive grave, the scale of the kingdom's secret atrocities becomes sickeningly clear to everyone. Raoul mockingly declares a winner in his bone-digging game, his cheerful tone contrasting sharply with the horror. Enrico the stable boy stares in absolute shock, finally realizing the true nature of the labor he performed. Grabbing the boy's head with a firm, painful grip, Raoul reminds him that honesty is his only hope. With eyes burning with a dark intensity, the hero asks if Enrico knows the true number of victims. The dark silhouette of the castle looms over the carnage, a monument to the countless lives snuffed out. A maid points toward even more remains as the terrified stable boy begs piteously for his life. Another pit overflows with fresh corpses and bones, revealing the systematic slaughter that took place within the walls. Raoul smiles at the wild evidence, savoring the visible terror of the servants who helped hide these crimes. He describes the horrific mutilations of the victims, noting how their tongues were cut and bodies processed like livestock. Leaning in, Raoul asks a chilling question about the general's diet, causing Enrico to break down in tears. The hero violently enforces his demand for the truth, ignoring the stable boy's cries of sheer, unadulterated pain. He confronts the entire group of servants, exposing how they profited from cleaning up after the royal massacres. Wearing a predatory and demonic grin, Raoul declares that the servants are just as rotten as their masters. Adam and Connie remain arrogant, claiming their father's return will soon send the hero to the underworld. Raoul looks amused by their confidence, noting how little they understand the dire reality of their situation. A beautiful, sinister woman reveals she has already summoned the general back to their fortress for protection. She aims a deadly poisonous arrow, declaring that the main dish for tonight's dinner has been decided. Raoul stands firmly in the center of the clearing as the servants continue their grim task nearby. The siblings continue to mock their captor, insisting that their father will make quick work of him. With a bone-chilling grin, the hero decides that it is finally time to untie the two captives. A magical halo erupts behind Raoul's head as he prepares to execute the next stage of his plan. Suddenly, a projectile streaks toward the mother figure, who watches in sudden and overwhelming confusion as it approaches. Her expression shifts to pure horror as she realizes the trajectory of the arrow she originally intended for another. The poisonous shaft pierces through her chest, initiating the special duty Raoul promised earlier with cold finality. Adam and Connie stare in wide-eyed shock, watching their mother become a victim of her own lethal weapon. She chokes and gasps as the poison takes hold, her body jerking violently from the toxic internal assault. The woman collapses onto the grass while the children scream for her in a state of absolute devastation. Raoul shrugs off their wails, mockingly noting how their rotten family secrets have finally been exposed to light. The poison transforms her face into a gruesome, skeletal mask as she claws at her throat in agony. A dark shadow looms over the weeping siblings as they beg for a mother who can no longer answer. Blood and foam leak from her mouth while her eyes roll back, surrendering to the horrific and inevitable end. Looking down with a satisfied smirk, the hero warns her not to die before the performance truly begins. Raoul turns his predatory gaze toward the trembling children, suggesting they fulfill their duties before their father returns. In a dense forest clearing, the general and his troops take a brief moment to rest beside their horses. A soldier asks to provide water for the steeds while the group settles into the quiet woodland surroundings. Suddenly, a panicked shout erupts as one of the men spots something truly terrifying emerging from the shadows. The general stares intensely toward a blindingly bright light flickering amidst the thick, dark foliage of the woods. From the brilliance, a translucent and glowing figure manifests, its hollow eyes fixed upon the shocked military men. The soldiers recoil in absolute disbelief, recognizing the messenger they had brutally murdered just the day before. High-pitched screams of terror fill the air as the men desperately scramble back from the spectral apparition. General Brown watches the absurd scene unfold, his face hardening as the impossible phantom continues to approach them. A haunting voice echoes through the trees, commanding the warriors to return to their true master immediately. The glowing messenger delivers a chilling message, stating that Raoul and the general's children are waiting for him. Frozen in place, the veteran commander can only gape in horror at the mention of his precious family members. The narrator explores the many ways Raoul might exact his brutal revenge through a series of dark, sadistic visions. Consequently, the princess descends into a state of total madness, her mind shattered by the hero's relentless psychological warfare. Shifting back to reality, Raoul takes a breath against a tree trunk heavily stained with fresh, dark blood. He looks down into a shallow pit filled with the mangled corpses of those who followed his orders. Sitting casually on the grass, the hero notes with cold indifference that these murderers received exactly what they deserved. He remarks on the extreme convenience of dark magic, which allows him to peer directly into a person's past. With a simple gesture, Raoul activates a sinister spell, causing the bodies in the pit to glow ominously. Shadowy, grinning spirits begin to rise from the remains, eagerly answering their new master's call for more chaos. These dark entities surround the hero, cackling about their newfound obsession with the thrill of slaughtering the living. Raoul muses on the inherent darkness of humanity while staring coldly into the distance. He recalls the many commoners and servants he once fought so desperately to protect from harm. Realizing their souls are actually rotten, and they find a sick delight in sacrificing others' lives. Standing before the mass grave, he admits his naive misunderstanding of the true cruelty of humans. He shifts the blame to their master, whose leadership fostered such a depraved and violent environment. A sudden rustle in the tall grass signals the arrival of a formidable new presence. General Brown finally appears, coming face to face with the hero in the gruesome scene. The veteran warrior's expression hardens into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred and brewing rage. Raoul greets him with a mockingly casual smile, noting that the commander arrived ahead of schedule. He spreads his arms wide in a grand, theatrical gesture to welcome the general home, revealing the horrific sight of the general's mutilated wife tied to the massive tree trunk. Consumed by grief and fury, General Brown lets out a bone-chilling roar of absolute hatred. Raoul presents the carnage as a masterpiece created by the general's own sadistic and bloodthirsty sons. He sits casually while the children continue their gruesome task with unsettling and practiced skill. The general's eye twitches with an intensity that promises a swift and incredibly violent retribution. He lunges forward with a desperate, crushing blow, fueled by the deepest possible human despair. Raoul easily evades the strike, mockingly telling the grieving man to calm down and look closer. The hero maintains his unsettling composure, smiling as the battle for vengeance truly begins. A massive energy slash tears through the air, narrowly missing the hero as he ducks away. General Brown brandishes his weapon with lethal intent, demanding a final answer for these atrocities. Raoul mockingly laughs as the general throws desperate slashes at him in a fit of rage, and the veteran commander ignores the taunts, focusing all his strength on a single massive strike. Yet effortlessly, Raoul raises his hand to stop the blow with a shimmering barrier of magical energy, causing the general to glare with bared teeth, shocked that his strongest attack was easily stopped, until Raoul leans in with a demonic grin, asking if this scene triggers any hidden memories. As he stands before the bleeding tree, forcing the man to witness his family's total desecration. Meanwhile, the narrative shifts back years ago, showing a younger, innocent Raoul beneath a similar tree, where life in Baden village was simple and peaceful, filled with the warmth of his community. So the young boy frequently explored the nearby woods, searching for treasures hidden within the undergrowth, eventually discovering a cluster of fresh mushrooms growing at the base of a sturdy old oak. And he proudly presents his find to his older sister, who praises his keen, observant eyes, leading to the humble harvest being prepared for a delicious and warm family feast at home. While the siblings watch with hungry anticipation as their mother sets the table with favorite foods, then she surprises them with a warm hug, expressing deep love for her two precious children. Although she jokingly scolds them, asking if they have carefully washed their dirty hands before dinner. Located in the western kingdom of Kurz, Baden village remained a small and quiet settlement then, where Raoul lived peacefully with his mother and sister as a very happy family of three, often spending ordinary days finding joy by chasing wild rabbits through the vibrant and green fields, until the young boy finally pounces on his prey, excitedly declaring that dinner has been caught, and he grips the rabbit tightly, determined not to let his hard-earned prize escape the bushes. The peaceful memory abruptly fractures as the scene transitions into a realm of deep and suffocating darkness, returning to the moment young Raoul celebrates his successful rabbit hunt before the nightmare truly begins. Suddenly, a blood-covered man named Uncle Hans stumbles out from the bushes in a state of panic, desperately gasping the horrifying news that their entire village is currently under a brutal and systematic attack, revealing a landscape of fire and death where innocent neighbors lie slaughtered amidst the smoldering ruins, leaving young Raoul paralyzed by a primal and overwhelming terror that he cannot hope to fully comprehend. Until a group of royal knights arrives on horseback, claiming they have come to offer their help, where a younger General Brown consoles Raoul's sobbing sister amidst the wreckage of their former lives, explaining that he heard reports of a demon raid, but arrived far too late to stop the carnage. Gazing upon the devastation with a look of practiced sympathy that hides a much deeper internal darkness, showing the young boy standing before the gruesome sight of his mother tied to the massive tree, staring up at her lifeless form as his childhood innocence is permanently and violently shattered forever, causing the general to notice a strange divine light beginning to radiate from the broken and grieving child. While the boy weeps inconsolably, his intense resentment manifesting as a power he never asked to possess, leading the commander to declare that the boy's light is a sign he is the chosen hero, as he offers the orphan a place within the royal castle to nurture and weaponize his growing strength, vowing to use the boy's awakening powers to defeat the abominable demon scum through absolute military vengeance, sealing their fateful and dark pact with a simple, deceptive handshake amidst the bloodied grass and smoke. Raoul accepts his new role in silence, his eyes hardening with a cold and focused lethal resolve, as the memory finally concludes, dragging the narrative back to the brutal and unforgiving reality of the present. Raoul admits his past naive belief that only demons were capable of such fiery and mindless destruction, remembering how he once foolishly trusted the lies about monsters taking lives and ravaging villages. Then he mockingly performs his old heroic vows, declaring his mission to save all of mankind. While General Brown listens in silence, his face twisted into a mask of pure, dark anticipation. Suddenly, the commander erupts in laughter, proudly confessing to burning the hero's wretched village to ashes, and he screams that his only regret was not being able to finish the hero personally, boasting of his own unparalleled strength while looking down upon the boy he considers a brat, leading him to describe with a sickening grin exactly how the hero's bloody mother tasted, recalling the woman's final moments as she bled and piteously pleaded for a young child's life, as she offered her own body as a sacrifice if only the soldiers would spare the boy. But she was ignored while she begged for mercy amidst the smoke and the falling embers. General Brown details the horrific acts of cannibalism he committed against her right before her son. However, Raoul simply smiles back with chilling indifference, casually asking the general for his point, leaving the veteran warrior momentarily stunned and drooling at the hero's lack of any emotional reaction, who calmly notes that while he is bored, the gruesome food story was quite a masterpiece. And as the air grows heavy and the weight of the hero's dark power begins to manifest, gesturing toward the mutilated woman, Raoul explains that he can perfectly reproduce any horror he witnesses. Then he mockingly laughs at the general's repetitive claims of being the strongest warrior in the kingdom, causing the commander to lash out in a frenzy, dismissing the hero's title as absolute hogwash, and he declares that the time for the hero's final judgment has finally arrived right now. Raoul smirks, accepting the challenge with two crucial words while preparing for the coming slaughter, as he declares it is time to start the show, vowing to break his enemies apart by revealing the general's sons are chained in a dungeon, offering a slim chance for rescue, leading Brown to bellow a cannibalistic threat as a massive explosion shatters the ground between them. Though the general lunges with incredible speed, Raoul casually sidesteps the lethal blade with ease, mockingly questioning if his opponent actually expected to land such a puny and pathetic blow, so the hero prepares his own counterattack, declaring it is finally his turn to strike back, with a cold, murderous intensity gleaming in his eye as he draws his black blade, causing the two warriors to clash violently while the air rings with the general's rage. Yet Raoul playfully evades every strike, maintaining his unsettlingly cheerful demeanor amidst the duel, further taunting the desperate man by dismissing his legendary swordsmanship as nothing more than weak, until a devastating impact rocks the battlefield, leaving the veteran commander gasping for his breath, while Raoul laughs manically, pinning his opponent down and encouraging him to try his absolute best as the general howls in agony when flames erupt, his sanity slipping under the hero's assault, prompting Raoul to celebrate the magnificent spectacle of his enemy's suffering amidst the inferno. His eyes burning with dark satisfaction while declaring this brutal display is exactly what he desired, ignoring the demands for his son's location to instruct the broken man to look even closer. Then the hero offers a cryptic smile, sensing something significant approaching through the battle's chaos. Just as a sudden, violent collision interrupts their exchange, sending debris across the blood-stained clearing. While shifting shadows and light signal the next phase of their brutal, world-shaking confrontation. Raoul and the general continue their dance of death, kicking up clouds of dust across the desecrated field. The veteran commander eventually falters, hunched over and gasping for air as his stamina rapidly depletes, prompting Raoul to mockingly inquire if the kingdom's strongest warrior is already out of breath so soon. While Brown glares back with eyes full of sweat and absolute, unbridled hatred for his smiling tormentor, he lunges again, screaming his title of the strongest, while being repeatedly blasted back by invisible forces. A massive surge of power finally sends the general sprawling backward, crashing into the blood-stained earth. Raoul watches with feigned surprise as his opponent crawls through the dirt, refusing to admit his total defeat. He looks down with a pitying expression, calling the man's claims of being the strongest a pathetic jest. Mockingly waving a white flag, the hero sighs that he has no choice but to end this game. A trembling hand reaches out toward the massive sword embedded in the ground, desperate for one last stand. But Raoul maintains his distance, waving the flag while encouraging the man to keep trying to reach him. The general gasps and wheezes, his face a mask of utter exhaustion and growing despair amidst the carnage. Just as he nearly grasps the hilt, Raoul delivers a swift, brutal kick that sends him tumbling away. Laughing at the man's misfortune, the hero notes how close he was before telling him to try again. He continues to taunt his broken foe, commanding the general to go all out and try once more. Fresh blood splatters onto the grass, marking the escalating physical toll of the hero's relentless and focused torture. General Brown groans in agony, his body failing him as he lies broken beneath the weight of his sins. The clearing remains littered with debris and blood as the sun sets on the once proud commander's legacy. His face remains pressed against the earth, eyes clouded with the realization of his complete and utter helplessness. Standing triumphantly over his victim, Raoul casually announces that it is finally time for their final dinner together. Raoul stands over his defeated foe, mockingly suggesting it is finally time for their special dinner together. The hero remains perfectly calm as he watches the general's pride crumble into absolute and hopeless despair. Sigil forces absolute surrender, labeling the veteran warrior's loss to a mere brat as the ultimate humiliation for his hollow strength. Raoul decides that since the commander no longer wields a sword, his hands have become entirely useless. Magic sigils sever limbs. Ignoring the agonized screams, Raoul cheerfully prepares his opponent for a very rare and gruesome feast. Severed hands lie abandoned. Shadows shroud the room. Eye reflects pure terror. Finding himself seated at a grand banquet table alongside his own zombified and vacant-eyed children. Appearing dressed as a professional chef, he jokingly scolds his victim for passing out from pain. Adam and Connie sit motionless, their expressions empty as they drool upon the fine linens of the table. Children giggle mindlessly. The Avenger dismisses the veteran's rage, claiming he is simply reciprocating the cruelty humanity showed him first, explaining he used a specialized drug discovered in the family's own cellar to break the boys' minds. Stone corridors loom ominously, heavy footsteps echo finality. He wonders where to house his latest collection of shattered souls within the castle's sprawling and dark dungeon. Dungeon cells house captives. Vacant-eyed castle staff cling to dungeon bars, their minds completely shattered and bodies mindlessly drooling. Even Uncle Hans appears broken behind the iron gate, reduced to a hollow shell by a mysterious influence. Raoul clicks his tongue in annoyance, seemingly unimpressed by the pathetic state of his latest set of captives. He questions if the general's wife caused this vegetative state, while the children weep for their dead mother. Deciding they are entirely useless now, the hero contemplates discarding them within the dark depths of the dungeon. A small glass vial rolls across the stone floor, catching Raoul's attention as it stops near his boot. With a sinister glint in his eyes, Raoul smiles at the discovery of the potent and specialized drug. Returning to his chef persona, he notes the general's wife came from a prestigious family of skilled healers. he cheerfully announces his plans to visit her family next, offering to deliver any final parting messages. Raoul mockingly promises to relay the general's crude insults to the healers, while the broken man screams in fury. The surface of a large iron plate begins to glow with an intense, searing heat for the banquet. Chef Raoul rings a silver bell, gleefully signaling the start of a horrific carnival feast for his guests. He labels his ingredients as 2 lambs and a bull, causing the general to recoil in absolute horror. Brandishing a sharp kitchen knife, the hero decides where to begin his systematic and gruesome culinary preparation. The veteran commander begs for the torture to stop as the cold reality of the situation finally hits. The blade of the knife shines brightly, reflecting the madness of the man currently holding the lethal weapon. Leaning in with a terrifyingly calm expression, Raoul declares his intention to start the main course immediately. An eye wide with primal terror stares back, unable to look away from the impending and bloody nightmare. Raoul presents a fresh shoulder roast while the general's desperate screams for mercy echo throughout the dark dungeon. With a bright and cheerful smile, the hero proudly displays the first cut of meat for the feast. Raoul admires the creamy oil on the fresh meat, preparing to sear it on the scorching iron plate, while General Brown gasps in terror as the hero casually suggests seasoning the upcoming dish with salt and pepper. The meat sizzles loudly against the hot metal, releasing an aroma that signals the start of the feast. Then Chef Raoul serves a perfectly cooked portion, mockingly inviting his captive to enjoy the meal medium rare, reminding the mutilated commander that he no longer has hands to feed himself during this special royal banquet. Consequently, a magical seal forces the general's mouth open wide as he trembles in absolute and primal fear, so Raoul playfully offers a bite of the cooked meat, telling his broken guest to say, "Ah," like a child, before ruthlessly shoving the unidentified flesh into the man's mouth while the general struggles against his physical bonds. The room echoes with muffled screams and gags as the veteran warrior is forced to consume the gruesome offering, leading the hero to smile with fake warmth, casually inquiring if the flavor is truly as scrumptious as expected. But the general collapses further, his spirit breaking as he violently rejects the horrific meal he was just fed, prompting Raoul to scold him for wasting a favorite dish that was prepared with such careful and sadistic effort, expressing genuine surprise when the commander actually manages to swallow the bloody contents forced down his aching throat, causing Brown to erupt in a frantic, hate-filled roar, labeling his tormentor a damned heretic amidst his agony. However, the hero merely laughs off the insult, cheerfully announcing that the next course will be the succulent thigh. Then he presents a plate of ribs, continuing his systematic and culinary torture with an unsettlingly lighthearted attitude, followed quickly by a serving of tripe as the hero meticulously works through his planned menu of human suffering, eventually offering a final dish of tongue while mocking the general's inability to speak his mind any longer. Empty and blood-stained plates remain as a testament to the horrific meal that has finally reached its conclusion. Finally, Raoul observes the bloody banquet table, noting with dark satisfaction that the general enjoyed his full course. Raoul suggests feeding the general's son bull meat while brandishing his chef's knife with dark glee. As the veteran commander stares in mute horror at the sickening implication of the hero's next move, the Avenger leans in close, mockingly inquiring which specific part of the meat the boy should taste first, before sudden explosions of blood and agonizing screams shatter the tense silence within the banquet hall. While the hero casually admires a fresh cut of meat, declaring the quality to be truly excellent today, he then playfully feeds the cooked flesh to the vacant-eyed child, ordering them to say, "Ah," who consumes the offering with a mindless, drooling hunger that betrays their completely shattered mental state, prompting Raoul to laugh at the general, noting how the child mirrors his father's previous behavior, leading the desperate man to beg for his heir's life while callously abandoning his younger child's safety. He grovels on the floor, pleading for forgiveness and the release of himself and his eldest son. Yet the hero's gaze remains cold and unforgiving as he begins to recount his own tragic history, reminding the general that his own mother once piteously pleaded for her son's life in the same way. So he commandingly orders the broken warrior to recall the horrific desecration of his mother's lifeless body, while a heavy boot crushes a skull on a silver platter to symbolize the finality of his vengeance. Raoul towers over his victim, promising that the general will now finally face the exact same fate, as a sharp blade approaches a weeping eye while the man fruitlessly screams for anyone to save him. Consequently, the full moon rises silently over the castle walls as the night's bloody work nears completion. Birds scatter into the dark sky, fleeing the scene of the unspeakable atrocities committed within the fortress. Eventually, Raoul walks away from the mangled corpses, declaring that his performance has finally reached its end, noting with cold indifference that dead bodies offer no satisfaction once their capacity for rage is gone. Raoul stands victoriously, claiming he dealt with the castle's demons and found a very useful souvenir. Observing his next prey through a blood-splattered window as they sit for an unsuspecting and peaceful dinner, dark stains mark the stone walls where the previous victims were discarded without a single shred of mercy. At the Altman Resort National Pharmaceutical Research Institute, desperate cries for freedom echo through the cold mountain air. A muffled voice answers the victims' questions with a chilling and detached indifference from behind a locked door. Inside the facility, researchers gather around a restrained girl to perform a series of gruesome and inhumane experiments. Dr. René Benecke wonders aloud how much of a human body can be removed before a person perishes. The lead researcher stands amidst the chaos, her cold eyes hidden behind glasses as she pursues her morbid curiosities. She admires her collection of severed limbs, planning to add more beautiful specimens to her growing gallery of horrors. Staring at a brain in a jar, she contemplates replacing human organs with those of common forest animals. While a terrified child screams for his mother, Renee considers the fascinating possibility of liquefying a living human brain. The imposing research institute sits silently against the backdrop of snowy peaks, hiding its dark secrets from the world. Heavy footsteps echo through the sterile halls as a high-ranking official approaches the doctor's private and blood-soaked chambers. Renee pauses her work, calmly inviting the visitor inside as the heavy metal doors creak open for him. Military Commander Advisor Lucas Eckhart enters, stating he arrived at the laboratory to retrieve the Institute's human waste. The doctor notes his early arrival and mentions 2 additional corpses are now ready for immediate disposal tonight. Lucas leans over a large metal container to inspect the contents of the latest shipment of discarded test subjects. Several trash bags reveal the mangled faces of victims whose lives were snuffed out for the sake of science. Looking down with a vacant expression, the advisor remains unfazed by the sight of the truly horrific human remains. Renee demands extra payment for the increased workload as the sun sets on the facility's latest gruesome successes. Lucas confirms he doesn't care about the body count as long as the experiments continue for his goals, leading Dr. Benecke to question the timeline of their payment while they walk through the cold research facility. As the advisor offers a sinister smile, admitting he needs verbal reassurance to feel truly at ease tonight, though the doctor privately scorns him, believing his head is filled only with thoughts of greed and profit, causing her to label Lucas a truly cunning man as he walks away whistling through the sterile corridors. Later, a simple bowl is placed upon a table as the researchers prepare for their next dark meeting, where Renee questions the feasibility of creating immortal soldiers for the kingdom's growing and insatiable military needs, prompting Lord da Costa to shout his desire for subjects that won't perish against a single common monster. As they discuss the potential trouble of controlling immortal beings while sipping tea in a quiet library room, leading the doctor to coldly point out that decaying bodies are mere rubbish regardless of their supernatural immortality, so she suggests a drug for self-destruction after use, which the Lord finds to be a truly brilliant idea. Suddenly, Da Costa's son Johannes enters the room, demanding the immediate commencement of this new and lethal development. Then he visits the infirmary, announcing to the unsuspecting and injured soldiers that they are moving to laboratories. While the wounded men react with wide-eyed hope, hearing the false news that a miracle cure was found, as Johannes displays a glowing vial, promising a drug that heals any injury regardless of its original severity, beckoning the soldiers to follow him toward their supposed salvation while they celebrate their chance at a future. However, the dream shatters as glass vials break upon the cold floor, spilling their dark secrets into light, leaving Dr. Benecke to stare in absolute horror as her carefully controlled experiments begin to spiral out of control, while the nobility watches in disgust, labeling the sudden and violent cannibalism of their subjects as truly horrific, as blood splatters across the walls amidst the desperate screams of those being devoured by their former comrades. Lord da Costa orders his son Johannes to fetch more human guinea pigs for their research. Meanwhile, the nobleman asks Dr. Benecke about the timeline of their project while observing the gruesome facility, Simultaneously, desperate commoners inquire if assisting with the experiments truly guarantees a life of comfort in noble houses. Soon, Dr. Beneke deceptively confirms their hopes, presenting a vial and instructing them to simply drink the drug. Heartbreakingly, impoverished siblings embrace with joy, believing they can finally afford bread to eat because of this opportunity. Wearing a sinister smile, the doctor declares it is finally time to begin her latest experimental procedure. Consequently, shadowy figures clash violently. Elsewhere, a mangled subject crawls through the dirt, its mind gone as it mindlessly begs for water. Beneke notes the failure, frustrated that the subjects revert to their human forms far too quickly. Thus, Da Costa maliciously offers to waive the debts of the poor if they follow his son. The greedy lord smiles down at his victims, masking his dark intentions with a false kindness. Promptly, the starving citizens cheer with overwhelming gratitude. Completely unaware of the horrific fate awaiting them soon, the noble pair shares a wicked grin as they lead their new batch of victims away. Suddenly, monstrous scream pierces air. Beneke reports that the strength and duration of the new serum are finally reaching satisfactory levels. Sharp claws rip through. The doctor's eyes gleam with a disturbing and obsessive light as her dark ambition nears fruition. The group witnesses the chaotic birth of the berserker within the depths of the research center's arena. Lord Da Costa praises the doctor's success, suggesting they immediately administer the drug to more soldiers. Finally, blood splatters everywhere. Raoul declares the cleansing of Killer Castle complete, while admiring his newest and most morbid souvenir. While peering through a blood-stained window at his next group of unsuspecting prey during their dinner, as the brick walls of the facility are already marked with the dark stains of past victims, and screams for mercy echo from within the walls of the Altman Resort National Pharmaceutical Research Institute. Though a voice from within the laboratory mockingly ponders the meaning behind the victim's desperate questions, inside researchers gather around a restrained young girl, beginning a series of horrific and invasive medical experiments, leading Dr. Rene Beneke to coldly question the limits of survival while adjusting her glasses with interest. As she stares ahead with a chillingly focused gaze, driven by a complete lack of human empathy, then the doctor admires her vast collection of severed limbs, planning her next gruesome addition to the shelves. While gazing at a brain suspended in fluid, she considers the results of cross-species organ transplantation experiments. Even as a captive child begs for help, Renee contemplates the fascinating scientific merits of liquefying brains. Meanwhile, the imposing laboratory structure stands tall, its elegant facade hiding the nightmare unfolding deep within, until Johannes pulls back the curtain, commandingly ordering the staff to commence the next phase of development. As he strides into the infirmary, questioning the purpose of the injured soldiers awaiting their medical care, where the nobleman falsely announces that Dr. Beneke has finally developed a miracle cure for all wounds. Then he presents a single vial, promising a drug capable of healing any physical injury without exception, causing the wounded men to react with wide-eyed hope, eager to follow their leader toward a future. However, the floor is littered with shattered glass and spilled liquids, signaling a sudden and violent accident, leading Lord Da Costa to adjust his glasses in frustration, labeling the chaotic situation as utterly ridiculous. Finally, heavy boots pace the floor, while the sound of labored breathing fills the tense and sterile air. Lucas Eckhart remains impassive, stating he doesn't care how many subjects are added to the research tally. Then Lord Da Costa anxiously presses for his payment, receiving a firm promise it will arrive today. As the advisor offers a thin smile, claiming he only feels ease after the financial details are settled, although Dr. Beneke privately mocks him, believing his mind is consumed entirely by greed and monetary gain. Watching him walk away whistling, she labels him a cunning man within the facility's cold, sterile halls, while a researcher's hand reaches for a mortar and pestle to begin crafting a new, more potent formula. Consequently, the doctor questions the feasibility of mass-producing immortal soldiers to satisfy the kingdom's insatiable military hunger, prompting Lord Da Costa to insist on creating subjects that won't perish instantly against a single monster. As they debate the risks of managing an immortal army while sharing tea in the vast library, leading Renee to remark that a decaying body is mere rubbish, regardless of its supernatural longevity, so she proposes a drug for time self-destruction, an idea the Lord finds to be absolutely brilliant, until Johannes interrupts, commandingly ordering the laboratory staff to begin the development of the serum immediately. Then he visits the infirmary, telling the injured soldiers they are moving to the research laboratories instead, causing the wounded men to react with wide-eyed shock, hearing the false promise of a miracle cure, as Johannes displays a glowing vial, claiming it can heal any physical injury, no matter how severe, beckoning the group to follow him toward their salvation while they celebrate their supposed lucky break. However, vials shatter upon the cold stone floor, spilling their dark and toxic secrets into the light, leaving Dr. Beneke to watch with a look of clinical intensity as her plan begins to unfold. While the nobles watch in horror as their test subjects turn into cannibals, suspecting the hero's influence, finally Lucas Eckhart stares ahead with cold eyes, pondering the true scale of the hero's planned vengeance. Lucas calmly observes Johannes's rising panic, noting that there are clearly some complicated circumstances at play here. Johannes desperately shouts for the conversation to stop as the dark truth begins to claw at his mind. Dr. Beneke labels the hero a crazed traitor, while Da Costa frantically orders her to remain silent immediately. Lucas offers a chilling smile, agreeing with the doctor's harsh assessment of the hero's current mental state. He dismisses the hero as an ignorant fool who understands nothing about the true ways of this world. Staring ahead, Lucas declares that a murderer driven by revenge is simply not a threat worth fearing at all. Lucas demands to know exactly what transpired in the past to cause such a violent and planned retaliation, warning them that without total honesty, his ability to provide any protection will be completely and utterly compromised. Da Costa hesitates, his face pale as he begins to reveal a connection to a dark past event. He mentions top-secret drugs used during the war, while Johannes watches in a state of sheer, mounting terror. Lucas instructs them to settle down, reassuring the group that his presence alone is enough to ensure safety. The desperate lord searches for any sign of insincerity in the advisor's cold and perfectly calculated words. With a steady gaze, Lucas confirms his commitment, his confidence masking a much more sinister and hidden agenda. Lucas claims he is the only man in existence capable of matching the hero's strength on equal footing. Da Costa places his full trust in Lucas, citing rumors that his skill surpasses hundreds of common soldiers. The group gathers for a reward-driven pact while the Lord laughs manically at their perceived and incoming victory. Outside, a violent storm rages over the Research Institute, mirroring the darkness growing within the facility's cold walls. Lightning cracks across the sky, briefly illuminating the jagged peaks surrounding the isolated and blood-soaked laboratory grounds. Bloody handprints appear on the windows behind Lucas, signaling that a new horror has finally arrived for them. The entire group freezes in sudden shock as the reality of their impending doom finally shatters their fragile composure. A monstrous, skeletal face peers through the darkness, its hollow eyes reflecting a truly terrifying and mindless bloodlust. Johannes and Dr. Beneke erupt in high-pitched screams of terror as the ghastly apparition approaches them from the shadows. Lucas Eckhart remains unnervingly calm while the panicked Lord Da Costa desperately asks for an explanation for the horror. The monstrous creature suddenly lunges forward with a violent snarl, signaling that this nightmare is merely just the beginning. Johannes frantically begs Lucas to intervene and drive the beast away, while he clutches his head in absolute despair. A magical field of runic script surrounds Lucas as he stares down the monster with a cold, detached intensity. The magical announcement declares that everyone is trapped inside and must survive a deadly game until the stroke of midnight. Outside, a violent thunderstorm lashes against the Research Institute, mirroring the chaotic and blood-soaked events occurring within the walls. Dr. Beneke composedly identifies the threat as a reanimated corpse being manipulated by a powerful and sinister dark magic. Lucas warns the group that their unknown enemy expects them to descend into panic and total disorganized internal conflict. He commandingly demands a full explanation of the past actions that successfully incurred the hero's deep and legendary wrath, explaining that the hero's vengeance strictly follows the ancient rule of an eye for an eye this time around. A brief flashback reveals the innocent supply soldiers Raoul once considered his beloved comrades before they were lost. Da Costa nervously confesses to prescribing performance-enhancing drugs to those supply soldiers during the height of the war. He callously dismisses their resulting deaths as insignificant side effects, while focusing only on his own personal political gain. Dr. Beneke smugly asserts that the soldiers should be thankful for the power her drug granted them before they perished. Lucas inquires if the remaining supplies of that specific drug are currently under heavy protection within the research facility. The trio stares in sudden, wide-eyed realization as the potential consequences of a theft begin to dawn on them. Johannes panics at the thought of the institute turning into a literal haunted house if the drug is stolen. Lucas calmly echoes the word haunted while staring ahead, with a look that suggests he finds the idea intriguing. Benica leads the way to the storage room while a panicked Johannes begs her not to leave him behind. Lucas questions the meaning of the word haunted as the nervous group marches down the sterile institute hallway. Lord Da Costa trembles in silence, his face pale with the weight of the secrets he is hiding. Lucas mockingly notes that they are still clinging to their pride even at this late and desperate stage. The Lord frantically insists that their previous experiments are a top-secret matter that can never be shared. They finally arrive at the reinforced metal entrance marked as storeroom number 1 to check their remaining supplies. Lucas prepares to enter the room while the exhausted nobles struggle to catch their breath behind him. A steady hand inserts the intricate cross-shaped key into the lock, signaling the reveal of the facility's interior. He calmly announces the opening of the vault, while Beneke watches with a mixture of hope and dread. They find the shelves completely empty, staring in disbelief at the missing vials of their precious research drug. A mocking note left by Raoul taunts them with crude drawings, stating that the contents were first come, first serve. Da Costa erupts in fury at being made a fool while Beneke realizes the building is no longer safe. She desperately urges everyone to escape outside as magical runes begin to encircle her in a glowing ring. A sudden flash of light startles the doctor, signaling that the hero's trap has finally been sprung upon them. The group finds themselves hopelessly trapped by dark magic as they realize all paths to freedom are now blocked. Raoul strolls through the darkness playing a trumpet, accompanied by the skeletal remains of the former General Brown. He gleefully presents the game rules, mocking the general's new role as his personal and obedient supply carrier. The terrified researchers gape in horror as Raoul cheerfully announces that their lethal game is about to begin. Panicked staff members scramble through the corridors as the vengeful hero and his undead companion pursue them slowly. With a delighted and innocent smile, Raoul prepares to orchestrate the next movement of his blood-soaked masterpiece. Raoul stands in a grand hallway, arms outstretched, gleefully announcing that the deadly games have finally begun. Accompanied by the reanimated general, the hero explains they must reach the highest floor immediately. Raising a gloved hand, Raoul addresses his terrified audience with a theatrical shout to capture their attention. Smiling brightly, the Avenger invites the reanimated remains to play together in this horrific game of survival. He commands the skeletal general to charge, unleashing a violent wave of energy against his panicked victims. The research staff screams in absolute terror as the undead monster approaches with lethal and singular intent. Crashing through stone walls, the skeleton brutally overwhelms the scientists while debris flies in every direction. Raoul mockingly warns his companion to be less violent, insisting that the players must remain alive for now. The undead carrier begins piling the broken researchers into a corner like discarded trash at Raoul's command. A trembling doctor begs for his life, desperately pledging to do absolutely anything to avoid further pain. Finding the offer perfect, Raoul's expression shifts to a look of innocent and deeply unsettling delight. He suggests there is a specific task he needs help with, making the survivor hope for salvation. The hero presents a bitter drug, asking if the terrified researcher is willing to consume the mysterious liquid. Suddenly, a black-gloved hand clamps down on the man's jaw, forcing his mouth open with crushing strength. The hero holds the small glass containing the drug, preparing to force the first dose into the researcher. Raoul gleefully encourages his victims to try their best, while the potent drug takes effect across the group. The researcher's eyes bulge with fear as the toxic substance begins to course through his shaking body. Foul liquid coats the man's tongue while he gags on the concoction forced down his aching throat. Agony shatters the quiet as a body contorts violently, beginning a gruesome transformation before the vengeful observer's eyes. A monstrous shadow emerges from the remains, leading Raoul to conclude that the experiment was a success. The grotesque berserker monster stands tall, its body covered in sharp spikes and stained with dark blood. Soon its distorted face erupts in a bone-chilling scream, revealing rows of jagged teeth and a long tongue. While Raoul calmly notes that the transformation into such a beast inevitably leads to an abnormal, driving thirst, then the creature unleashes a devastating blow, shattering stone walls and sending blood spraying across the laboratory floor, leading the hero to casually admire the absurd strength possessed by his latest successful and terrifying creation. Meanwhile, terrified researchers scramble in every direction, realization dawning that they cannot hope to escape the monster's reach, as a desperate man is suddenly hoisted into the air by an unseen and incredibly powerful grip from behind, where the skeletal general looms over his captive, declaring with cold finality that there is no hope for escape. Although one survivor attempts to flee through the smoke, unaware of the even greater danger waiting in the shadows, he runs directly into the path of the berserker, which demands water with a guttural and terrifying voice, before a single violent strike obliterates the man, sending a massive shower of blood across the sterile walls. And the monster seizes another victim, while the remaining staff members beg for mercy that will never come. So Raoul offers a deceptively gentle smile, mockingly asking the broken researchers if they are feeling all right now. Eventually, an injured scientist collapses onto the ground, gasping for breath while blood pools around his battered body. While his colleagues watch in absolute shock, their minds unable to process the total annihilation of their lives. Then a massive clawed hand extends toward its next target, signaling the continuation of the hero's calculated slaughter, prompting Raoul to instruct the monster to spare the researchers, intending to use them for his next experiment, and a black-gloved hand suddenly clamps down on a man's face, forcing his mouth open with crushing strength. So the hero demands he consume the bitter drug to fulfill his specific role in the deadly game. Finally, an agonizing scream echoes across the Altman Resort National Pharmaceutical Research Institute as the nightmare concludes. Raoul playfully tells the skeletal general he should have dressed as a nurse for this bloody occasion. Moreover, he notes that the first floor contained over 100 people, while a horde of monsters gathers around. Suddenly, grotesque beings with elongated tongues beg for water while their distorted faces fill the dark hallway. As a monstrous claw reaches out frantically, driven by a primal and insatiable thirst created by the drug. Consequently, Raoul mockingly warns his undead companion to watch out as the scene descends further into total chaos. Meanwhile, the skeletal general stares ahead with hollow eyes, serving as a silent, grim reminder of past betrayals, until a violent impact shatters a monster into a spray of blood, while Raoul casually observes the mess. Furthermore, the horde continues to scream for water, their humanity completely erased by the Institute's horrific secret research, leading to bodies piling up as the transformed researchers lose all self-control in their desperate search for moisture. Then Raoul complains about the blood splattering on him, finding the messy massacre to be a nasty inconvenience. However, he remarks on the magic being cut off despite having just found a potentially useful new assistant. So stepping through pools of blood, Raoul tells the fallen general that his service ended far too quickly. Additionally, he admits the weaponized humans are impressive, acknowledging the superior effects of the doctor's lethal drug. Before spreading his arms wide, the hero invites the remaining monsters to approach him for their final fate. While Raoul watches with a cold smile as another victim begs for water amidst the escalating and violent slaughter, next he moves with incredible speed, dodging the lunges of the thirsty monsters while maintaining his chillingly calm demeanor. Although noting their surprising speed, Raoul navigates through the horde as they continue their desperate and futile pursuit. Soon a powerful kick connects with a monster's head, sending blood and teeth flying across the sterile floor. Eventually, the hero uses a runic spell to silence a particularly unruly subject. Sighing at their lack of discipline, finally delivering a crushing blow, Raoul declares the brutal carnage to be a fitting and well-deserved punishment. Raoul laments his ruined suit while the transformed researchers beg piteously for more water. Vile creatures lunge forward. Consequently, he asks if they enjoy drinking the very drug they once cruelly created for war. Glowing runes trap them. Hero dodges with ease. Beasts demand more water. Hero ends their service. Then checking his silver pocket watch, Raoul notes that only 5 minutes remain for the game. Furthermore, he reflects that these once respected researchers have become no different from mindless, savage beasts. In fact, during his preliminary inspection, he thoroughly uncovered every single one of their past heinous wrongdoings. Consequently, the transformed humans reveal their pathetic intellect, unaware they were always treated as expendable pawns. Previously, they had boasted of global supremacy through the completion of their horrific and unethical military drug. Shockingly, not a single soul among the hundreds working here possessed even a tiny shred of human decency. Nevertheless, Raoul remains determined to follow his bloody path of revenge, regardless of the world's growing madness. Suddenly, the silver clock strikes the hour, signaling that the time for the next stage has arrived. Monsters scream in pain. Subject clutches splitting head. Vile skulls burst open. So Raoul laughs at the carnage, gleefully demanding to be shown even more intense and beautiful pain. Lethal transformation begins now. Chaos unfolds as the mutated researchers begin to violently react 15 minutes after consuming the lethal drug. Raoul erupts in manic laughter while his victims spontaneously explode into a gruesome and terrifyingly messy gore. He sits casually on the blood-stained stairs, sighing with satisfaction at the absolute carnage he orchestrated. Twisted flesh and gnashing teeth merge into a horrific mess as the self-destruction sequence reaches its peak. With a terrifyingly intense gaze, the hero asks if this magnificent display of systematic suffering is great. A sudden flashback reveals a peaceful time when innocent soldiers called out his name with genuine admiration. Young supply soldiers once thanked him profusely for protecting them from the horrors of the front lines. Raoul recalls desperately mowing down monsters to ensure that no harm would ever befall his precious comrades. Yet the true villains were not monsters, but the greedy nobles standing right behind the unsuspecting troops. These innocent men were transformed into mindless berserkers just to test a drug and died in vain. Back in the present, Raoul mocks the so-called prodigies who once claimed they were masters of victory. He points out that their intellectual safety was only possible because disposable soldiers bled for them. Wearing a demonic grin, he forces his remaining captives to witness the current, blood-soaked reality of things. The once sterile research facility is now a literal battlefield drenched from floor to ceiling in dark gore. Dusting himself off, the hero prepares to advance to the next stage of his systematic psychological purge. He reaches for another crate, maliciously planning to force the staff on the second floor to drink. Looking back with a chilling smile, Raoul announces he is heading up for a final medical exam. Desperate cries echo through the darkness as the weight of the hero's vengeful magic begins to suffocate. Raoul touches the rune-covered doors, humming happily as his perfect plan for the next floor takes shape. Rain falls steadily over the dark, quiet grounds, while the nightmare continues to unfold deep within. Rain lashes against the Altman Resort National Pharmaceutical Research Institute, setting a grim tone for the evening. Inside, Lord Da Costa vents his frustration about the ridiculous state of the kingdom's current security affairs. He laments being forced to divert essential guards from the research facility to the royal capital's defense, expressing fear that they stand to lose everything if an unexpected disaster strikes their isolated laboratory tonight. Johannes frantically suggests bribing the military commander for reinforcements. Refusing to die like his own little sister, the group places their final hopes on a lethal poison, believing it will effortlessly neutralize the resurrected hero. However, Dr. Beneke coldly commands them to stop bickering and use their heads to find a real solution. Raoul finds their desperate plotting to be absolutely hilarious while they analyze a realistic warning from the capital. The nobles attempt to stay calm, unaware that their secret conversation is being observed by a vengeful predator. The hero mockingly notes they have been mindlessly waiting for him for 2 hours in total ignorance. He reveals that he has already locked them inside the room, sealing their fate with magical runes. Raoul promises to make their experience colorful by unleashing his terrifying and deceptive illusion magic upon them. With a snap of his fingers, he announces that the main event is starting on the top floor. A grotesque, bloody figure suddenly bursts into the room, sending the noble group into a frenzy of terror. Raoul laughs manically at their superb reactions, explaining that he created this monster from pieces of human flesh. He horrifies them further by stating the mask he currently wears was also crafted from the general's skin. Reveling in the chaos, the hero admits that this gruesome and psychological reenactment felt truly magnificent. The group scrambles toward the drug storage in a panic, fearing the institute has become a haunted house. They discover an empty shelf and a mocking note from Raoul declaring his successful and earlier theft. The hero reveals he has already exhausted the entire drug supply to fuel the carnage below. The group stares at the runic barrier, realizing that Raoul's dark magic has successfully sealed every possible exit. Frantic voices fill the hallway as they realize that escape is impossible, and they must play his game. Eyes wide with terror, the nobles wonder who among them will be the first one to be found. Da Costa suggests locking themselves in and staying perfectly still until the clock strikes midnight. Lucas remains skeptical, pointing out that surviving for another 6 hours is a nearly impossible task. Amidst the mounting tension, Dr. Beneke proposes moving to a hidden room where the hero cannot reach them. The group watches in surprise as Lucas questions if such a secure and secret sanctuary truly exists. The doctor confirms the existence of the room, causing the panicked group to desperately beg for her lead. Privately, the scientist scorns the men, labeling them absolute idiots while they scramble in total disarray. She notes how they completely missed a glaringly obvious sign right in front of their faces. The doctor suggests a brief coffee break to calm their nerves before making their final move. She exits the room alone, leaving the worried men to wait while she heads toward the kitchen. As the door closes, Beneke gloats over their stupidity, realizing she finally has a moment to herself. White ceramic cups sit ready on the shelf as she begins preparing the drinks for her unsuspecting captives. With a cold and calculating smile, the doctor realizes this distraction is her only chance to escape alone. The steaming coffee is carefully poured onto a tray, its dark aroma filling the quiet laboratory space. Returning to the room, she serves the beverages while the men attempt to settle their rising anxiety. Lord Da Costa reaches for a cup, hoping the warm drink will steady his trembling hands. Lucas accepts his portion with a vacant expression, still processing the dire nature of their situation. Johannes offers a polite thanks, completely unaware of the true intentions hiding behind the doctor's calm mask. A dark swirling abyss manifests within the vessel as the psychological tension between the survivors reaches a boiling point. Lucas suddenly stops the doctor, demanding that they exchange coffee cups to prove her innocence before drinking. He questions her sudden initiative to brew drinks in a facility dedicated to creating mindless, bloodthirsty monsters, bluntly accusing the scientist of attempting to drug them into beasts to use as shields against the hero. Dr. Beneke smirks with chilling arrogance, remarking that Lucas really should have intervened much sooner than this. She gleefully reveals that neither of their cups contains poison, leaving the nobleman paralyzed with a sudden, growing dread. Leaning in with a mocking smile, the doctor tells the advisor to cease his obvious and pathetic acts. The survivors gape in absolute shock as the realization of a much deeper betrayal begins to surface. Beneke notes that the hero always follows a rule of absolute retribution, realizing they were fooled from the start. She questions how Lucas could possibly understand the hero's personal feelings so intimately in this dire situation. Noting the official document, she asserts that standard military reports would never contain such specific and emotional insights. But he stares back with an intense gaze, declaring that her own talkative nature has led to her downfall. The doctor erupts in manic laughter, claiming her superior intelligence has finally secured a victory over the hero. A silent tension fills the air as the true identity of the supposed advisor is finally laid bare. From beneath the shadows of his hair, a sinister and knowing smirk spreads across the hero's face. Beneke walks toward her enemy, her eyes burning with a mixture of academic curiosity and lethal intent. Raoul laughs heartily, mockingly congratulating the doctor for finally noticing the subtle hints he left behind. With a predatory grin, the hero asks if his charade was perhaps a bit too simple for her. The doctor's face contorts with a sudden violent rage at his insolence and his terrifyingly calm demeanor. She screams that he has lost the game of hide-and-seek and will perish within these walls. Dr. Beneke screams in triumph, declaring that the hero will perish by the hands of her monstrous creations. She confirms her dark intentions with a wicked smile, reveling in the perceived completion of her lethal masterwork, explaining that the revamped drug is 100 times more powerful, forcing an imminent transformation within 1 minute. The doctor erupts in manic laughter, mockingly inquiring how it feels for the legendary hero to finally lose. Raoul maintains his composure while the scientist gloats, savoring her short-lived delusion of having achieved absolute victory. However, the hero simply asks if that is the extent of her plan, causing the doctor's confidence to falter. Her expression shifts to one of pure confusion as she struggles to understand why her enemy remains so calm. Leaning in close, Raoul mockingly suggests that her deduction skills are far more pathetic than he originally anticipated. Beneke desperately tries to convince herself that he is merely buying time, while she labels him a sore loser. She continues to underestimate her opponent, foolishly believing that every passing second only serves to strengthen her position. With a manic shout, she commands her supposed berserkers to finally finish the hero once and for all. Yet the subjects remain motionless while a cold realization begins to dawn upon the horrified and confused scientist. She reflects on her numerous successful experiments, baffled that her flawless drug is suddenly failing to produce results. Raoul's sinister smile widens as he informs the doctor that no amount of time will trigger the desired transformation. He points out the obvious flaw, stating that her drug only functions when administered to living human beings. Mocking her for being engrossed in a simple puzzle, he expresses his deep disappointment in her supposed superior intellect. Dark magical energy surges through the room as the illusions begin to shatter under the weight of his power. The hero prepares to conclude the game of hide and seek, his intense presence suffocating the remaining hope. Revealing his true form in a glowing red eye, he declares that she has officially lost his deadly game. He exposes the truth that the nobles were already corpses, animated solely by his own powerful and deceptive illusion magic. Raoul admits he enjoyed the time-consuming process of manipulating and disguising his noble puppets, causing Dr. Beneke to collapse onto the floor in a state of absolute paralyzed terror. As the hero leans in, mockingly pointing out the failure of her proud deduction skills, while he erupts in laughter at her wasted secret weapon and her pathetic, tear-filled display, the Avenger roughly grabs her face, promising to initiate a new and far more personal game. Ignoring her desperate pleas for freedom while reminding her of the countless atrocities she committed, she fruitlessly tries to shift the blame, claiming she was merely following orders from her superiors, leading Raoul to chuckle, noting that her fallen partners made the exact same pathetic excuses. Though she labels them liars, the hero asserts they were all eager participants in the cruelty. Furthermore, he declares that blaming dead men is a pointless endeavor as he prepares his next move. With a snap of his fingers, he plunges the doctor into a room filled with horrific gore, gleefully presenting the mangled remains of her past research as a grand and gruesome exhibition. The scientist gasps for breath, her mind buckling under the weight of her own past sins. While she wails in denial, Raoul sits comfortably on the stairs and laughs at her shock. He then directs her toward the underground laboratory, suggesting she continue her journey through the hall, mockingly inviting her to swim through the sea of mutated corpses to reach her final destination. The hallway overflows with the grotesque results of her experiments, while the hero watches her struggle. Now in the B1 laboratory, Beneke trembles as Raoul questions her sudden and overwhelming fear. He chuckles darkly, finding it ironic that she is terrified of the very human weapons she created. Finally, he points out the dozens of lives she snuffed out within these cold, sterile walls. Raoul lists Beneke's horrific crimes, like making horizontal slices of a screaming girl's body starting from her feet. He mentions transplanting monkey brains into children, causing the doctor to stare in wide-eyed, sweating and paralyzed shock. Beneke desperately demands proof, screaming that unprovable facts mean absolutely nothing to her at this point in time. Refusing to argue, the hero roughly grabs her head, asserting that evidence is entirely unnecessary for her coming punishment. A visceral montage of her experiments appears as Raoul asks if she finally recognizes her own gruesome handiwork. The scientist breaks down completely, screaming her confession while begging him to stop the overwhelming psychological and visual assault. She piteously claims she didn't act of her own volition, while Raoul mockingly labels her a sore loser. Beneke insists she was merely obeying orders, though Raoul notes her partners attempted to use the exact same excuse. Realizing her colleagues betrayed her, the doctor erupts in a frantic rage, labeling them as absolute and total liars. Raoul reminds her that since the others are already dead, blaming them is a completely pointless and futile endeavor. Pushing her through the door, he commandingly orders her to witness the final results of her beloved medical experiments. He presents a massive mountain of rotting berserker remains, mockingly declaring it to be the true legacy of research. Blood stains her lab coat as the physical weight of her atrocities begins to suffocate her remaining sanity. Raoul laughs manically from atop the pile of corpses, while Beneke lets out a long and agonizing scream. He points toward the door at the end of the hall, leading to the Institute's primary underground research laboratory. Suggesting a unique opportunity, the hero commandingly tells the doctor to swim through the sea of her own failures. Beneke crawls through the sea of mangled bodies while Raoul playfully urges her to move faster toward her destination. They arrive at the B1 laboratory where Raoul mocks her for being terrified of the human weapons she created. The doctor suggests he target the villagers instead, to which Raoul replies with a terrifyingly cheerful and sudden agreement. Finally, wearing a truly monstrous expression, the hero declares that the systematic suffering is just downright and completely irresistible. Dark shadows and falling debris mark a grim transition as the atmosphere in the laboratory grows increasingly heavy. Raoul casually mentions his plans for the villagers, while Beneke reacts with wide-eyed shock at his merciless declaration. Spreading his arms wide, the hero officially announces the start of a horrific human experiment on his new subject. Two massive berserkers loom over the petrified doctor as Raoul introduces them as her new personal medical team. Donning a white lab coat with a cheerful smile, Raoul prepares to fully embrace his role as the director. Beneke screams in absolute desperation as the monstrous creatures close in, signaling the start of her eternal nightmare. Raoul mockingly praises her healthy lungs while promising that her ability to scream will serve her well during torture. Strapped tightly into an experimentation chair, the once proud doctor trembles as she faces her own cruel methods of research. The hero surveys shelves packed with jars, noting that Beneke should be the one most familiar with their contents. Holding up a container of lethal liquid, Raoul inquires if these are indeed the very same poisons she created. With a humming melody, he prepares a specialized concoction, intending to turn her own toxic creations against her person. Raoul ruthlessly forces the doctor to consume every last drop of the bitter and potentially lethal medicinal drug. Beneke gasps and retches while her tormentor casually inquires about the flavor of her own specialized chemical recipe. Primal terror consumes the scientist's gaze as she realizes the horrific effects of the drug are finally taking hold. Agonizing screams erupt as the poison courses through her veins, while Raoul watches the unfolding spectacle with cold detachment. Unsettling visceral sounds echo through the chamber as her body begins a violent and unnatural internal physical transformation. The hero mockingly complains about the foul scent, while Beneke is reduced to a gasping, drooling, and broken mess. Raoul erupts into lighthearted laughter, playfully suggesting it is finally time to focus his attention on her back. A monstrous clawed hand crackles with dark energy, ready to execute the next phase of the systematic physical assault. Flanked by his obedient berserkers, Raoul looms over his strapped-down victim to oversee the continuation of the experiment. Raoul reacts with disgust to a foul odor, mockingly accusing the doctor of a crude bodily function. Dr. Beneke collapses in agony, her face flushed and drooling as she piteously begs for someone to help her. Screaming in absolute despair, the scientist clutches her stomach, convinced that she is currently dying from the poison. Raoul activates a magic seal, explaining he will temporarily strengthen her internal organs to prolong her agonizing suffering. The hero smiles cheerfully, assuring his victim that her intense pain will remain perfectly intact throughout the process. Mockingly offering a glimmer of hope, Raoul suggests that he might allow her to consume a life-saving antidote. Beneke stares up with wide, glazed eyes, her mind reeling from the physical and mental toll of the torture. However, the hero pauses his speech, his mouth twisted into a sinister and lingering smile of dark anticipation. He commandingly tells the doctor that she must synthesize the necessary antidote with her own two hands now. A dark silhouette of the hero looms, mockingly declaring that a genius should easily work while vomiting blood. Raoul demands to witness a miracle of science, eager to see what his brilliant subject can eventually concoct. A crude drawing of the general enjoying his meal serves as a dark reminder of the hero's previous vengeance. Beneke screams that the task is impossible, while Raoul playfully warns her to hurry before her limbs fail. Magic runes glow as the hero forces his captive into a frantic race against her own rapidly approaching end. The doctor crawls across the cold floor, gasping for air while stubbornly refusing to surrender to her inevitable death. Raoul watches with a cold gaze as his victim screams her defiance into the dark and sterile laboratory air. Various chemical components and test tubes wait on the workbench for the doctor's desperate and shaky attempt at salvation. The hero sits comfortably flanked by his monstrous guardians, listening to the labored breathing of his broken prey. Trembling violently, Beneke reaches for the scientific equipment, her eyes fixed on the task of creating her own cure. Sweating profusely, the scientist carefully prepares to combine the final ingredients while her life hangs by a thread. Dr. Beneke frantically mixes chemicals to save her own life within the dark and the sterile laboratory. The hero observes her desperate and frantic scene with a mocking sense of theatrical pity. The doctor screams her resolve to live, while the hero playfully encourages her frantic efforts. Various scientific tools clatter on the desk amidst the sound of her heavy and labored breathing. She suddenly erupts in joy upon discovering what she believes is a successful, life-saving formula. With tears streaming down her face, the scientist desperately consumes her homemade and experimental cure. Benica declares a triumphant victory over her captor with a manic and completely twisted grin. She mocks the hero's intelligence while he offers her a sarcastic and rhythmic round of applause. However, Raul remains perfectly calm, reminding her of his previous dark and cryptic warnings. He whispers that this is merely the beginning of an eternal and systematic human experiment. Benica's expression shatters as she realizes her escape was always a cruel and calculated lie. She screams in denial, questioning the hero's previous promises regarding her potential survival tonight. Raul mockingly points out that her medical expertise only bought her a few extra minutes. He gleefully grabs his victim to transition her into the next horrific and physical phase. The hero ignores her desperate wails while activating a glowing and ancient magical tome. He prepares to document every single agonizing detail of her coming systematic physical torture. Beneke breaks down into a sobbing mess, piteously begging for a forgiveness that will never come. Raul remains unmoved, stating that apologies are entirely useless for those who have already died, noting that the dead cannot hear her while the massive monsters loom over her body. The doctor is forced through a relentless cycle of numbered and increasingly gruesome medical experiments. Dr. Beneke clutches her head in absolute agony, screaming that her skin has suddenly become unbearably itchy. Raul mocks her condition while she scratches herself frantically, noting her vast collection of dangerous medical drugs. The scientist's mind begins to fracture as she screams about the intense itching consuming her entire bloody body. Frantically tearing at her own flesh, she piteously begs for help amidst the relentless and systematic torture. Benica stands in a daze, her body covered in self-inflicted wounds as she gasps for her fading breath. Raul playfully encourages her continued efforts, his cheerful tone contrasting sharply with the horrific scene unfolding here. Collapsing onto the cold floor, the doctor weakly gasps out the count for her 41st forced consumption. The hero holds another glass, reminding her that she must drink once for every single life she stole. Roughly grabbing her hair, Raul commandingly orders the broken woman to do her best for the next round. He ruthlessly forces more liquid down her throat, continuing the 41st iteration of this grueling and repetitive cycle. Raul reacts with mock disgust as Beneke vomits the liquid back up, labeling her physical reaction as nasty. Clinging to a shred of hope, the scientist whispers her desperate desire to continue living despite the pain. Raul smiles with chilling warmth, telling her to hurry and synthesize the antidote if she truly wants survival. He maintains his firm grip on her hair, while mockingly cheering for the doctor's pathetic and failing efforts. The hero notices her inability to stand, questioning if her body has finally reached its absolute breaking point. Dr. Beneke stares blankly with a drooling mouth, her spirit completely crushed by the relentless and focused experiments. Deciding to escalate the torture, Raul prepares the 40-second drink while wearing a truly sinister and wide grin. He pours another vial into her mouth, cold-bloodedly announcing the 40-second attempt at synthesis despite her piteous gags. Raul pauses for a moment, his gaze sharpening as he observes the final physiological changes in his subject. He casually adjusts his sleeve with a rustling sound, preparing to conclude this gruesome chapter of his revenge. Benek lies motionless on the floor surrounded by empty glass vials and pools of liquid. Her eyes remain vacant as the life finally drains from her battered and broken body. Raul checks his silver pocket watch, precisely timing the conclusion of his latest gruesome experiment. He meticulously records Dr. Beneke's death in his logbook after 17 hours and 31 minutes. Closing the book with a snap, he prepares to move on from the Bloody Research Institute. The hero mockingly remarks that her untimely death is a most unfortunate and tragic occurrence indeed. The narrative of the crazed doctor reaches its grim conclusion amidst the remains of her experiments. His monstrous assistants begin to dissipate into clouds of dark smoke as their current service ends. Stretching his arms with satisfaction, Raul enjoys the quiet following the chaotic and violent events. The Research Institute stands silent under the full moon as the storm finally clears away. Raul stretches lazily, noting with a pleasant smile that the rain has stopped without him noticing. Looking up at the clear night sky, he appreciates the sudden and peaceful cessation of the weather. He walks through the field, enjoying the sweet night aroma following the intense laboratory stench. The hero decides to retrieve his horse and travel toward his next destination, under the moonlight. A peaceful village nestled against snowy mountains appears, unaware of the darkness and vengeance approaching. The vast landscape stretches out silently, serving as a backdrop for the hero's continuing and bloody journey. With a demonic glint in his eye, Raoul vows to show no mercy to his next targets. A lone lantern flickers through the dark forest as a mysterious hooded figure begins to move. Deepening shadows signal the beginning of another systematic phase of his absolute and total revenge. A voice calls out to the monster, marking the start of a new and deadly confrontation. Children play in a peaceful village, innocently declaring their vow to protect their home from any potential harm. Their mother interrupts the game, warmly calling them inside to finally end their long day of fun. As they head home, the children learn their father is currently stationed on the gate's night watch. Nearby, the man sits diligently at his post, unaware of the mysterious visitors currently approaching the village walls. Two lost girls emerge from the dark forest, piteously asking the lone guard for directions to safety. The watchman reacts in sudden surprise, scanning the shadows for any other hidden travelers within the woods. Realizing they are merely lost children, he quickly moves to offer them shelter within the village gates. He kindly welcomes them inside, noting that many refugees and merchants frequently pass through this border settlement. The atmosphere remains deceptively calm as the villagers settle into their modest stone and thatch-roofed homes. Family members greet the returning watchman, surprised by his early arrival and the unexpected guests he brought. The traveling sisters tentatively enter a village home, offering their humble greetings to the welcoming local family. The host serves fresh water while questioning what two young children are doing so deep within the forest. The older girl explains they were traveling for their sick father before eventually losing their way tonight. The village mother reassures them, noting the girls are likely around the same age as her own children. She holds her shy younger sister close, explaining the girl's natural fear of meeting new and unfamiliar people. The villagers smile at the heartwarming sibling bond, touched by the younger girl's concern for her older sister. The locals praise the child's thoughtfulness, unaware of the true nature of the guests currently among them. A young boy brings up the constant threat of monster attacks, expressing concern for the village's continued safety. The older girl looks thoughtful, noting reports of strange monsters appearing recently around the quiet mountain region. However, the father offers a broad and confident smile, reassuring everyone that the village remains perfectly fine. A young boy brandishes a dagger, boastfully claiming he'll send any monster straight to hell with a single strike. The older traveling girl offers a warm smile and expresses her sincere gratitude for the family's kindness. Finding the boy's bravery amusing, the father laughs and introduces his son as the village's most reliable knight. Reaching into her bag, the girl prepares to offer a token of appreciation to their generous hosts. She presents a beautiful bottle of perfume, explaining it was meticulously crafted from flowers grown at her own home. The family reacts with wonder as the father suggests they stay for the night, surprising his own wife. Accepting the offer with a bright smile, the older girl clutches her pocket watch while expressing her thanks. The village family warmly welcomes their new guests to join them for a hearty dinner without any hesitation. A spread of delicious bread, soup, and fresh greens is laid out, promising a satisfying meal for everyone. The sisters stare at the feast with wide, sparkling eyes of pure anticipation and genuine, overwhelming hunger. As the father commandingly invites everyone to dig in, the gifted perfume bottle rests prominently on the table. Hidden beneath the table, a mysterious and dark figure remains perfectly still while the family eats above. Stationed at the main village gate, an elderly watchman sits silently in the cool and dark night air. A younger villager approaches the post, noting the unusual presence of guests currently staying within their walls. The old man offers a knowing smile, predicting that the night will likely be very lively for the community. The quiet mountain village remains still beneath the vast night sky, its stone houses glowing under the moonlight. Inside a quiet room, a small figure sleeps peacefully beneath a warm blanket as the night deepens further. The younger sister remains fast asleep, her face a mask of innocence amidst the dark and silent surroundings. Suddenly, the young girl stirs and groans in her sleep, her peaceful rest interrupted by a strange sensation. She slowly opens one eye with a look of mounting confusion, sensing a shift in the room's atmosphere. The older sister wipes her eye as an unsettling atmosphere begins to settle over the quiet village dinner table. Her younger sister suddenly recoils in terror, her face drenched in sweat as she senses an immediate, hidden threat. Agonized screams pierce the air as victims collapse, their eyes rolling back while they cry out in physical pain. The father figure watches with a sickening grin, mockingly offering an apology while the girls succumb to the drug. The village elder reveals their predatory nature, claiming that such ruthless treachery is simply their established way of life. Both sisters fall into a deep stupor, becoming helpless prizes for the villager's cold and well-planned trap tonight. With a click of his tongue, a villager rummages through their bags, spilling their personal belongings onto the floor. The locals gather around the unconscious girls, expressing their deep disappointment at the tiny traveling expenses found in bags. One man dismissively kicks the gifted perfume bottle aside, labeling the scent as nothing more than cheap, worthless junk. They callously plan to profit from the children's remains, suggesting that selling their long hair would yield the most. Under the pale moonlight, a group of villagers confirms they have finished digging the holes for their latest victims. Morning arrives in the quiet village as a voice announces that it is already 7 o'clock in the morning. The father realizes it is time for his shift, thanking his son for keeping track of the early hour. Later, children play in the streets with stolen daggers, excitedly deciding to play a game of pretend pirates today. The parents warmly see their sons off, telling them to play safely while they go about their daily business. The father compliments his wife's stolen hairband, encouraging her to do her best throughout the coming morning hours. Stationed at the gate, a villager dozes off while sitting on a stump, completely neglecting his important guard duty. Another man arrives to initiate a shift change, taking over the gate's security as the sun begins to rise. A mysterious silhouette knocks firmly on a village door, inquiring if there is anyone currently present inside the home. The villager turns around in absolute surprise, his eyes widening as he encounters the unexpected visitor at his door.